Well, hello people of Defend the House, and welcome back to another big review Roundup podcast. I think I got that right.
I don't know. I'm never going to remember the name. The Big Roundup podcast is what they're labeled on YouTube.
Shit. Okay. Well,
one day we'll get it right.
It's been a while.
It has been since November 27th was the last episode that went up.
It's been a bit
Man,
quiet.
a lot has changed since November 27th.
Yeah, no shit, dude. A lot has changed.
5 months. 5 months can really change a lot, huh?
Wow.
Or 4 months.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not talk about that stuff for now. Let's focus on there actually being new video games back again. At least ones that we are interested in. Actually, no, I think it's pretty universal. You know, we didn't play Animal Crossing, but it came out the same day as Doom. It's just been a little bit of a wasteland when it comes to, you know, the big AAA things, and I would even say kind of the smaller things. I haven't really been playing any new indie stuff over the last, 5 months. It's been a wasteland for me, personally.
Yeah, I'm checking my games played in 2020 list, and we played one session of GTFO, which actually came out in December in early access. Kentucky Road Zero Act 5 came out, and Dreams came out.
Yeah.
But we've played all those already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quiet.
The wait is just about over. Things are starting to happen again. Today, we have Doom Eternal, and we're going to bring on our podcast pal Ben, who's in our normal Defend the House podcast, which you can listen to if you like these videos, these audio things, over on, I think, most places. iTunes, Spotify, Podbean.
Spotify, probably a couple others.
If you want more long, talky videos in this format, there is more content for you, and Ben is on those. He's actually the host of the Defend the House podcast, and he will be joining us for Half-Life Alyx because he's played it as well. We did not play Animal Crossing. We should probably say that.
We don't play Nintendo games on this show. Not anymore.
not until Mario Galaxy comes back out on the Switch.
Until all the Marios come out, apparently, but that'll be good.
Maybe we'll ask Ben what he thinks about Animal Crossing. Do a little, he can give a mini review. But chronologically,
5 minutes max.
Let's start off with Doom Eternal. Now you did
FCC disclosure. We got a code from Bethesda for Doom Eternal.
Oh yeah, nice, sick. So you did a review. And
Indeed.
I have not looked at the review. I haven't seen it. I was surprised to see it was 20 minutes, by the way.
Yeah,
that's
I was
a
surprised
thick
too.
review.
Yeah, I know.
So
it wasn't even as detailed as I probably would have wanted it to be as well.
Which is interesting because I don't think I have 20 minutes of things to say about Doom Eternal, but I also have a lot of opinions on Doom Eternal. And I'm pretty sure you loved Doom Eternal, so I don't know where those 20 minutes came from, but we're about to find out, I guess.
Yeah.
So I will start because people are bored of your opinions.
God, kill me.
They've heard you talk. So I am going to compare the beginning of my journey in Doom Eternal to another game. You might be able to guess it pretty quickly, and this is
it called Doom?
It is not. No.
Okay.
It is not. So I haven't said a large amount of opinions and things I think about Doom Eternal to you, but I think the one thing I did let slip and that you might have caught on to is that I kind of struggled at the beginning of Doom Eternal to climatize to the new flow of the game.
Yeah.
And the game I'm going to compare it to, for me, is actually Sekiro.
Sure, yeah.
When I first played Sekiro, I had a rough 5 to 6 hours in Sekiro because I had the muscle memory of Dark Souls deep in my brain, and Sekiro gave you a large repertoire of tools, and in the Dark Souls games, those were kind of optional. You didn't have to parry, you didn't have to use a shield if you don't want to. You can kind of base your character the way you want it to play. And in Sekiro, I wasn't using all the tools the game had given me. I wasn't changing the way I played from Dark Souls, and I was getting heavily punished, and I was getting frustrated. And my first 3 levels in Doom Eternal were actually pretty similar. I was playing it just like Doom 2016, and I was listening. I was taking in the new tools, the flame thing to get the shield. I obviously was listening to the dash and the blood punch. But I just I didn't realize how urgently you needed to use these things and how important they were to the flow of combat. And I wouldn't say I was getting destroyed in Doom Eternal.
You started on Ultraviolence as well, right?
Yes. And
I'm my recommendation, yeah.
Yeah. I just wasn't feeling good at the game. I was getting through it, and I just felt clumsy. And there was something... I just played... I replayed Doom 2016 a couple of months ago. And I was confused about why I wasn't getting into the flow state. And I just wasn't enjoying Doom Eternal as much as Doom 2016. But eventually, took me about 2 hours, I would say, near the end of the third mission, I finally started to understand that they had fundamentally changed how combat flowed in Doom Eternal. Which I think was worth it, because even though I had the initial frustration, I enjoyed having another learning experience in a Doom game. Because I think the original Doom, even though it's much more simple in its combat complexity, you still have that moment, if you can remember all the way back to 2016, where, again, we're new to the new Doom, and there is a moment when you play 2016 when you finally start to feel like you're in control and you're a monster and you're destroying everything. And it was nice to have that moment again in Doom Eternal. When I got to level 4, which I think is the mission where... This could be wrong, this could be mission 5, but the one we had the double Doom Hunter, Doom Slayer boss fight? That might be mission 4 or 5, I can't remember. You know which boss fight I mean.
Just so I... No? Oh, the Doom... Oh, yeah.
Doom Slayer? Yes. Doom Fighter?
The Doom Hunter, yeah. Because the cultist base is the like Arctic-y one. That's the 3rd level.
Yeah.
That's where I hear a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I get it now."
Yes.
And then the Doom Hunter base is the next one. I forgot what the Doom Hunter was. It's the floaty guys, right? With the shield
on the sledge.
On the sled, yeah. Right.
And honestly, mission 4, if that is correct, where you do the double boss fight, that mission was one of the most satisfying overcoming of a combat learning system. Learning curve that I think I've ever had in a video game. Sekiro comes very close. Sekiro is even more punishing, so overcoming that combat system and finally feeling in control of enemy encounters in Sekiro is really good. And Sekiro also has another, I think I described it as reading the Matrix code, where you finally see between the lines. Sekiro also has that feeling. But
where you just your eyes just go blank and then you're just parrying like a god every single hit, and you're
Doom Eternal has that, but just because of the the visceral nature of Doom, the music, when it comes to B, especially when I was kind of clumsy and crap at the beginning of the game, it actually made it more satisfying, because it just felt really shitty to be the Doomslayer and, to have played Doom 2016 twice and not feel like the Doomslayer. I felt like an imposter in the first 3 levels. I didn't feel like the Doomslayer. It was it felt shitty, dude. I felt like, I wasn't fulfilling his role. Imposter syndrome.
You don't want to let him down.
No. And so when I got that back in chapter 4, it felt so good. And I do think the combat in Doom Eternal is better than Doom 2016. And I understand why people don't like it as much as 2016. Doom Eternal is a really strange combat system. There's almost a logical problem-solving aspect to it, where your eyes are flicking between different things. You're looking at the battlefield, you're obviously monitoring which demons are there, and then you're quickly looking back at your health, your shields, and your ammo. And you're on the fly, as fast as your brain can manage, you're making this list, this computerized list in your brain.
Micro decision list, yeah.
Of
I said in the review.
Okay, how am I gonna take out the turret on this guy? How am I gonna blood punch this guy? How am I gonna get my shields back in the most efficient way possible with the weapons that I have? Yeah. And it's really, really, really fun when it flows together. I feel like in Doom 2016 they used the term combat chess, and I don't really feel like Doom 2016 is necessarily combat chess. I understand what they're talking about. Obviously, there's weaknesses. You got to shoot the pinkies in the back, and
But that's about the only enemy in that game as well. I was thinking last night, it's the Pinky Demon in 2016 is kind of the only enemy that you have to like really think about, and the shield guys, I suppose, as well, right? Whereas Doom Eternal, it's like 80% of the enemies are like the Pinky, in that they have sort of like a way you sort of have to deal with them.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Yeah, go continue if you have more.
Yeah.
Before I keep going.
Yeah, I have more.
Okay.
So yeah, when Doom Eternal is flowing, it is a more demanding combat system mentally and, you know, like dexterity
wise.
That's not a word.
Yeah.
And when you get into the flow state, it is, I think, the most satisfying combat system, at least of the genre that I've ever played. Because it feels earned. It doesn't feel like you are this beastly character and, you know, he's got super strength and an arsenal of incredible weapons, and that's why you're winning the fight. It feels like you win the fights in Doom Eternals because you are using every tool that you have been given, and you are managing and making decisions correctly, quickly. And that makes for a eternally more satisfying combat experience than Doom 2016. But I have quite a few things in Doom Eternal choice-wise which they made, which I don't think really complements that flow consistently. And I found myself in Doom Eternal not always being in that flow state, where I would argue in Doom 2016, it was non-stop. I was always in that flow state once I had control over those systems. And in Doom Eternal, I found myself not always feeling in control of every fight. And again, Doom Eternal might just be a combat system which has so many micro layers that I need to play it twice. Because I actually found that even near the end of Doom Eternal, I just kept feeling like I was getting better and better and better, even when I was near the very end of the game.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of things that you know what? I'm doing my whole review without letting you step in. I haven't seen your review, so before I go into some of the minor issues I have with Doom Eternal, which you probably heard elsewhere on the internet, this game has been surprisingly, I always forget the word. What's the word? Polarizing. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's weird. You look at critical reviews, very, very high. Still sitting at 90, I think. You know, people on Twitch playing it, loving it. Steam reviews all super high, but there are definitely people that aren't liking Eternal in a way that we didn't see with 2016, which I think is understandable. Yeah. I don't know if I would call it like a divisive game, because I would say the majority of it is like people saying, yeah, this is extremely good. And then there's obviously a larger group of people that are not liking it compared to what 2016 had.
Yeah, I think I'm just surprised that there is any negativity around the game at all. I was not expecting anyone to dislike aspects of the game. And honestly, I wasn't really expecting me to dislike any aspects of the game, and I kind of did.
Before playing it, I would have said like, I wouldn't expect people to feel negatively about parts of it. But having played it, you know, I can see like, yeah, I can understand parts of it being frustrating for people because they're fucking bad at video games.
Ooh.
The gist of the review, and I would say I still feel this way, the gameplay, combat systems, and levels were the things I wanted to be good from Doom Eternal, and they're, I would say, better for me than the last game.
Yeah.
The combat is more fun, the levels are more varied and interesting throughout, and then there's lots of sort of small things in the peripheral that are not as good as 2016. But I still think the combat, which is 90% of the game, is the most I've ever enjoyed playing a first-person shooter.
Ooh, very nice, very nice.
I clicked with the combat almost immediately, but you know, it does take, for a lot of people, it will take a good 2 or 3 levels for it to start to work. But like 10 minutes into the first level, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. You want, yeah, okay, I'm in. I'm on board. And I'm glad you brought up Sekiro as well, because it was on my mind a lot throughout that game. And I did mention FromSoft when talking about the game as well, because it does feel like Sekiro in a way. And it's interesting to hear Hugo Martin, who's the creative director of the game, say Sekiro was his favorite game of last year. And then he loves FromSoft games. And it's like, yeah, Sekiro was all about, like, play our way or go away. Don't go back to your fucking Dark Souls. Yeah. And Doom Eternal, for better and for worse for some people, is saying, you know, play this way or go back to Doom 2016. And Doom 2016 is a great game, but I think like the second half of it for me is sort of harder to stick through. Like I've replayed the first half of that game many times because you get this really nice progression and sort of upgrading. But then the second half is sort of a bit dull to me, just because you're just doing the same combat encounters the same way every time, where it's just like, the Super Shotgun beats everything in that game.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the rocket launcher. That's how I played like 90% of Doom 2016. And it's fun all the way through, but it just sort of becomes like really easy and samey. And one of the big problems that I feel like I've talked about a lot throughout this generation is seeing what are solutions developers find to get you to use all the cool stuff they designed, right? And some games find a solution. Others just sort of expect you to mess around with things like Prey or Dishonored or Breath of the Wild, things like that. And then there are some games like Sekiro or Doom Eternal where they're just like, we're going to build the entire game in a way that says you got to use our tools or get lost. And that's sort of alienating to a degree, especially Sekiro has the advantage of being like its own thing. It's not Dark Souls 2 and they're like, you better play this way, which is different from the last game, whereas Doom Eternal is a sequel, right? And it's like, it's changing the formula up as a sequel, which I'm glad they did, because I think if they just made the same game again, it still would have been enjoyable, of course, but it would have been less interesting, I think.
They probably did that to begin with, and were playtesting, and they were like, well, this is just 2016, but it looks better, and with a couple more weapons.
Yeah.
They could have risked making like a DLC feeling game, or an expansion pack feeling game.
Yeah, and I like they probably could have turned out a sequel to Doom 2016 in 2 years and made people happy, but it would have been the same game. Exactly the same game. And instead they spent 4 years making it, and it feels like a proper and interesting sequel in a way that a lot of games don't. A lot of games just sort of fall into that sequel problem of just like, yep, we, polished the edges a little more and made the exact same game again. And I'm glad they didn't. And so, like, the negative points that I see some people mention a lot, some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with, like the levels, I think, are as a whole way more interesting and varied visually and also exploration-wise.
Yeah.
I see people dunking on the platforming all the time, and
yeah,
I don't agree that it's a problem, because all the platforming is very easy and simple, much like it was in the last game, and there's not a lot of it. Like, it's a little front heavy, but as a whole, it still feels like 80% of the game is combat. And then the parts that were disappointing to me were the way they handled like the story and the tone, because I definitely liked the writing and humor and storytelling in the first game. It was one of those things where it's like, I'm glad this is good. If it was bad, I still would like this game a hell of a lot, And there's a few. I'll leave some of the smaller points that I forgot to mention in the review that I wish that they had done, that were done better in 2016. But the core of my feelings on Doom Eternal is that the meat of the game, which is the combat and the levels, is unbelievably good, and that makes me absolutely love it. So, because that's what Doom Eternal, that's what the last game was. It was combat and levels that were very good, with a bunch of other really good stuff around it, and then Eternal is combat and levels which are incredible, with some other stuff around it that is maybe a little lesser than the last game.
Yeah. So
I gave it 4.5 out of 5, by the way.
Nice. Very nice. So let's go back to some of your points.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the platforming.
Okay.
Because the platforming is something that I don't really understand what they were going for. I don't understand why they liked the wall grab mechanic so much. I don't get it. It just wasn't fast, and it just wasn't that fun. And it was also just, for me, there's just like a tiny bit of jank to it, where sometimes you boost and then grab, and then it's just a bit... I don't know why the platforming is based around the wall grabbing. I don't mind the wall grabbing being in the platforming, but it seems like the predominant form of platforming in the game is just like wall grabbing and then jumping to another wall. And I just don't really understand why they did that, because in Doom 2016, when they had the platforming sections, it was just jumping to platforms and a really nice flow.
It was with your feet, yeah.
I just don't. Yeah. I wasn't like grabbing onto a wall and like, curse you, id, and you're dumb. I wasn't furious about it. I was just like, why have you chosen this to be like the core of platforming?
I would regard the platforming the same way I regard the platforming in all those other games that have platforming, like the Tomb Raiders and Uncharted's and all these other games where it's like,
I did feel like that.
It's just sort of there and mindless, and I am sort of indifferent about it at this point. Like, in some of these games, like Tomb Raider, I'm really bored of it just because it's been done so much, whereas first-person Doom, it's like, there's not a lot of first-person campaigns anyway, so it doesn't feel quite as overdone, but it's just sort of like one of those game design things that is just sort of, I don't want to say it, but it's just sort of like one of those like lazy, just sort of like basic, but I never was bothered by it because it never felt like there was too much of it.
I wasn't bothered, I was bored, I think. I just didn't find it very interesting.
Yeah, I'm sort of indifferent to it. I like that the platforming allows for a bit more hidden secret stuff. The secrets felt a little more out of the way because of the jumping, that expanded jumping that you can do in this, whereas the last game it was just sort of like there was some of that in the last game, but there wasn't quite as much, I feel like. So
I enjoyed the secret hunting in this game. I got all of them. And in Doom 2016 I didn't stop for any of them. I didn't give a shit. I just went full throttle in that game. And in Doom Eternal, I kind of found it fun to scavenge. Because even when you get a perk that uncovers all the question marks, there's still like a little bit of head scratching sometimes where you're like, wait a minute, it's behind this, but how do I get to this? And I thought that was kind of fun. The only thing I didn't like when it came to the secrets is, this is all just playstyle stuff, this is very personal preference. I really hated the combat challenges with the timer. I hated that shit. I don't like being rushed. And also, enemies don't respawn in this game, so if you commit to them a couple of times, you're just like out of ammo. And you're just screwed. And you can't try them again without like reloading the entire game. Really, it's just not my thing. I don't like rushing. I don't like being under a time constraint. I think I left one at the end of the game just because like a Doom, what they call it again? Doom Hunter? Doom Slayer?
Yeah, Hunter,
And I had like no BFG, I had no Crucible, and I was like, oh, fuck off. I just can't be
armed. That's fair.
But an additional thing I really liked was the what are the ones called where you get the key and you go into the combat
The Slayer gates are so good.
They are awesome.
The first Slayer gate that I did, it was like 2 days before release, and I was like, it's only like an hour and a half into the game as well. I think it's like the second level there's a Slayer gate. And they sort of are like, you should come back to this later. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing... That was just like, oh yeah, okay, this game is fucking nuts.
Yes.
Because it's just 5 minutes of like 150 BPM heart rate. And then it's over and it's so good.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the Slayer gates because they have something in them which some arenas in the game don't have, and actually caused my biggest frustration in the entire game.
Interesting.
Let's just skip to it. I found some of the arenas in Doom Eternal to be too small. The enemies in this game are very aggressive. Some of them are really fast. There was a couple of fast...
The snake boys are the worst.
Yes, some of the bigger lads are so quick. And I just kept getting stuck. I would have these times where I was dashing around and I'd like run into a cyber mancubus and I'd turn around and there'd be another guy and I'd just be stuck. And, you know, some of these big lads take a little while to get down. And I would be pinched and just stuck in a corner. And I had it happen like 5 to 6 times where I was just...
Really? Wow.
I was just completely cramped. I couldn't move. And it was so frustrating because
I bet
Doom's about flow. And when you literally can't move, it makes me want to break my keyboard. And the reason I brought up the Slayer gates?
Yeah.
It's because they do a fantastic job of... There's portals everywhere in those arenas. The flow never stops. And for some reason, some of the arenas in this game just don't seem to have as much options when it comes to moving around. Obviously, it sounds like you didn't have this issue, but I just had a couple of times where I was just getting stuck in corners and trapped on a group of enemies because the quantity of enemies in this game is bigger than Doom 2016, which I don't mind. I will take a challenge, but some of them are so fucking fast, and some of the arenas were so cramped, in my opinion, that I was just getting stuck. And this problem kind of goes away later on if you hold on to a BFG or if you hold on to a Crucible. Is it called a Crucible, the big old sword?
Yeah, the Crucible.
If you have a charge with one of those, then the problem went away for me in the second half. I just didn't encounter it. But
the ice grenade's also pretty good for
yes. That's I love that. I use those like 10 times more than the normal grenades.
The ice grenade is so good.
But yeah, I just found some of the arenas to feel cramped with the amount of enemies and the size that they were. And I brought up the Slayer gates because they always felt so streamlined. They put like 6 portals all around them and you're just dashing around. You barely even know where you are in those Slayer gates because it doesn't matter. You're just moving.
I would have said, actually, for me, that the Slayer gates were the ones that felt small and cramped, if anything, to me.
Well, they are. But I feel like the portals kind of fixed that for me.
I think I got stuck. I had that happen where I got sort of surrounded in the first Slayer gate. I think I had it happen once, but it was only ever in that first Slayer gate.
I had it in the second one. And then it never happened to me
again. I didn't have that experience, but I totally understand.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a way where you could like dash through enemies, kind of from software-wise. I think they're kind of too big for that to be a plausible.
They'd be pretty broken.
You might clip into. I don't know. It was just something that never happened to me in Doom 2016, and it happened like 5 or 6 times in Doom Eternal. And man, oh god,
I bet. Yeah.
Fucking hell, dude! I got so pissed off when I got stuck. Jesus Christ.
The only times I ever got pissed off in this game was at enemies, which is a thing that I like actually, because it felt, you know, like a FromSoft game where you're just like, oh fuck, not these guys. Okay, all right.
Which guys?
How do I deal with you? There's a few. Well, Pinky Demons still are my bane.
I kind of like these guys.
Even though you have the dash now and it's really easy to deal with them, they still get me sometimes. The snaky boys.
Oh yeah, they're fucking annoying.
Whew, they are nasty. And then the first 2 encounters with the Marauders, I was like, oh, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
Oh, you motherfucker. I'm going to fucking... But then by the third encounter, I was like, all right, you want to party? Let's party. Let's fight, Marauder. Come on, bring it.
Let's talk about the Marauder.
Okay. The Marauder feels like a giant middle finger to everyone, and I love it.
I really, really like the Marauder. I like that this far into the franchise, like 1.5 games in, they break all the rules. They're like, at this point... you are fully capable. You have most likely, climatized to the new flow of combat, and you're probably back in control playing Doom Eternal. And then they chuck the Marauder into the mix, and he's an asshole.
Hunters from Bloodborne into the game. He's a hunter from Bloodborne,
and he's a massive asshole. And I really like that they did that. I think the game needed some, a spanner in the works, something to really mix up the game. And I also think that. It's just nice to have some enemies that are assholes. That's what makes From Software games so memorable. Is you're not supposed to like every enemy and be like, wow, this is fun. Sometimes enemies can just be massive dicks, and there needs to be something that makes you scared when you're on the battlefield, because nothing does near the end of the game.
And I can see people. I definitely understand the argument of being like, I should never feel afraid because I'm the Doom Marine, and it's like, well, we have a game for you, and it's called Doom 2016, because like. I never ever felt worried about an enemy in Doom 2016 because it was easy.
Yeah.
Whereas Eternal, there were like 4 or 5 enemies. Same with the guy that summons the like enraged versions of the demons.
It's like the Archvile or something.
Yeah, the Archvile. Yeah, that's him.
So I will say I don't think they got the Marauder quite right. He feels like this is gonna sound so mean. It feels like playing a Souls game made by not From Software. It feels like a Neo boss. It feels like a Neo boss fight, where it's like, I see what you tried to do. You try to do a From Software thing, and I like it, but it's just not quite. It's not quite right.
I totally get that, and I mean that's more because of the fact that From has like this unnatural understanding of how to make every enemy a bastard, and in just the right ways. That everyone else has failed to come close to. Yeah.
I think the Marauder, I think he has a bit too much health. Near the end, like I clear out the battlefield and I just like the loop of him, just his mid-range attack, green, hit him, green, hit him. It just did
you know you can 2-cycle him?
No.
If you get good at the weapon swapping, you super shotgun
and ballista,
gauss beam, rocket him, and then you get him on the second one, and you do that 2 full cycles of 3 weapon damage, and he's dead, and it's fucking amazing. I did it once, and I was like, "Holy shit!" You just delete him from the game. It was really satisfying.
But like I always got myself into a pretty steady loop with him, where you're just countering him over and over, and that. It would take like 8 times. You just like counter, counter, and most of the time you've cleared the battlefield except for maybe a few ads, to top yourself up. So it just didn't feel that exciting, and the dog goes down very quickly. I actually like the dog, just to make the boss more annoying.
I wish he had maybe like another throw in an owl maybe.
And I think the Marauder is just a little bit too quick. He can be very difficult to read, and I think his middle zone could be opened up a little bit, because sometimes I swear I'm in the middle ground and he shotguns me, and sometimes I swear I'm in the middle ground and he does his projectile, and I'm like, come on, I swear I'm standing in the right, and he's moving as well, really quickly.
He is very fast, yeah.
So I'm staying positive. I like the Marauder. I really like that he's in there, and I don't feel like they got it quite right. Did a couple more tweaks, and I think he would have been a legendary enemy. And I've seen, I've been reading the Twitters, and people on Twitter fucking hate everything anyway. But people, there doesn't seem to be the same mentality where a good From Software boss makes you hate them, but you enjoy fighting them. I see a lot of people have gone the other way, where they just purely hate it in a bad way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's probably, this game seems really mean to console people, by the way. This is
I can't imagine playing this game on a controller.
It's demanding.
I mean, granted. Like, people obviously are insanely good with a controller, and my skills have waned over the years. But yeah, like, it's nuts how precise you can and probably should be with your combat in that game. And hot swapping with numbers on the keyboard. Like, you can't 2-cycle the Marauder on a controller, because you can't instantly swap weapons.
Yeah.
You can't hit 5, 3, 7. And shoot each time. It really does feel like a game that was made for a mouse and keyboard.
It really does, yeah.
To be fair, it is called Doom. So like I understand that mentality.
It has a home.
Exactly, yeah. As someone that would regard the first-person shooter as the bread and butter genre for myself, it was a pleasure to sort of have a light From Software-esque experience with a first-person shooter, where it feels like every enemy has been really specifically fine-tuned to have a role, right? And specific weaknesses. That was a big thing that, like, the reason the review was so long is because I was talking about why the combat was so good, which I feel like we haven't really done yet, which is fair. I mean, there's lots of other things to talk about. But the balance of, like, how quickly you run out of ammo, how much damage you take from enemies, how every enemy has specific weaknesses and weak points, and is like long range and close range capable. It's just such a pleasure to play that game from start to finish.
I will say, sorry, you go.
Yeah. Well, every combat encounter in that game, I had to choose when I was going to play Doom strategically, because if it was like too late in the day,
yes,
I would be wired for way too long, because it feels like you're just like injecting coffee right into your bloodstream when you have to play that game, because I would just get so wired after playing it where I need to go like stare at the ceiling for an hour to just calm down and turn my brain off.
I was the opposite. I had to be wired to play the game. Like, I could not play it at night just because I was sloppy, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm good right now because it's 2 a.m. and I'm not doing the best. The reason it took me so long to beat it was because it was my morning game. I would play it after a cup of coffee.
Right after coffee.
yeah. The one thing I was going to say is
yeah.
There's been like a lot of complaints about the ammo stuff. I never had a problem with ammo in this game.
No, it's called the chainsaw.
Yeah, and they're really generous with chainsaw ammo. Sometimes I would
it recharges to 1 pip, so you can always kill the zombie.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Because I'd always
run up
to...
right at the beginning of the game, and it's sort of easy to forget about. Yeah.
Because there would be times where there would be chainsaw ammo on the floor, and I just couldn't pick it up because I was full. Like, it's very generous with chainsaw ammo. And once I got into the flow of chainsawing ads, like literally every 10 to 15 seconds or more, or more, no issues.
Never run out of ammo.
No,
yeah.
I think the only thing I got sloppy with is shield. I think shield was the only thing I was sometimes sloppy with in combat, but when it came to ammo, I was pretty topped up.
Well, let me tell you, it's very easy to stay max shield when you get the masterwork on the super shotgun, where you light an enemy on fire when you meat hook them, so that they drop armor.
Oh, that gives you armor.
Yes.
I got that near the end of the game.
You just attach them and fly right into their face and blow, make them explode, and you get 50 armor instantly. Yeah. It's.
I like the flame belcher. I think it's really satisfying, and it's a nice, another cog to put into combat to think about.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I love the chainsaw and the glory kills in this game, partially because you have to use them much more. Whereas in 2016, you'd chainsaw it like once in an encounter, and I would even rarely do glory kills because you just have so much more health and health items on the ground. But I love them especially in this game because both of them, but especially the chainsaw, they let your brain take a breath in the combat.
Oh, yeah,
where you're like, and you're making, you're doing your 1,000 micro decisions, shoot, blah, 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 and then chainsaw, and you're like,
yeah.
Okay,
I remember.
What's my next move? And you go.
I remember seeing the rune where it was like the rune where it was like speed up glory kills, and I was like, no fucking way, dude! I love the slow glory kills. I don't want to speed that up.
Yeah, and it's really nice to have that up and down constantly in combat, where you're just like you're at 1,000 miles an hour, and then you just. Chainsaw, and we're back. Okay, and then you get right back into the combat, and that combat loop never stopped being amazing to me.
So, do you want to talk more about combat? Because I do have some miscellaneous things I didn't really like about the game. Or do you want?
Sure. Yeah, go. You mean non-related to combat?
Yes.
Yeah. I am good to move on to miscellaneous complaints because I do have a few that I wanted to mention.
So this is really nitpicky, but while we're on the topic of the runes, I was kind of disappointed. This is so specific. I was disappointed in the mid-air slowdown rune, because
that one sucks. Yeah.
Because I was like, this sounds really cool, but while you're activating it, you can't activate a charge up attack with like the basilisk, ballista.
Yeah.
Basilisk is a giant snake.
Basilisk.
The ballista. And the ballista's awesome. And I also used a lot of the hold down right click things, and it doesn't work if you activate slow-mo before that. Really small nitpick, but why you're gone.
I didn't like that rune either, but you know why I didn't like it? Is because it slowed the combat down, and I never wanted to do that.
Yeah, and it just wasn't controllable enough. Like, I don't always want to slow down combat, but I love the idea of occasionally diving through the air, slow motioning something.
That feels like a really handy thing for consoles as well.
Just say it. All right.
I thought you were going to say I missed the rune challenges to get the runes from 2016, where you have the little goofy challenge that you have to do to get the rune. I sort of missed that.
Okay.
But I also forgot it existed until just now, so I guess I didn't miss it that much.
Yeah.
Continue, yes, please.
Another one is, I really liked, I don't know what to call whatever they were. I would call them the orbs. haste,
the
double damage.
power-ups, yeah.
I really loved those in Doom 2016. And they are pretty infrequent in Doom Eternal. And also, I don't have a fucking clue what any of them did. Like the blue
They're
one
all the same.
and the yellow one.
They're all the same, yeah.
I was just like picking
the
them
yellow one
up.
is haste.
Okay.
The blue one is heal. It heals you fully. The purple one is quad damage, and the red one is berserk.
I feel like I used quad damage once in the entire game. There was a few times where they were reasonably tucked away.
Yes.
And so I would do the whole combat encounter and then find them. And I'm like, why are you hiding this thing? Just like in Doom 2016, it was part of the combat. And the encounter would be designed entirely around that or being there. Like I remember when you first meet the Pinkies, they put a haste there so you can run around and easily shoot them in the tail. And when they put in a bunch of big boys, they would put in one double damage or quad damage, whatever it's called, quad damage. And then you see it and you strategically think, okay, I'm going to save this, kind of like you do with BFG ammo. When am I going to jump into this orb? And I missed those. They weren't as frequent and they were kind of tucked away. And I don't know, it was just, they kind of felt like an afterthought.
I mentioned them in the review, and I was actually glad that they were so infrequent because I thought they were part of the problem with the back half of that game, of the last game, where it just got so easy. Because I felt like, especially the last 2 missions in Doom 2016, it feels like every other combat encounter has a power-up in it that just makes the combat, you just be like, all right, I'm just going to berserk and kill every single enemy.
It's just variety, though, to me.
Yeah, I was glad that they were so rare. I totally get missing them, but I was glad that they were rare because it meant I just kept engaging with the combat.
Yeah.
Exactly as it had been throughout the whole game. But yeah, it almost feels like they should have just not put them in because I feel like each of them show up once, maybe twice at best.
Yes.
I feel like Haste was the one that I saw the most, and it was maybe 3 times in the whole game.
I think I had Berserk once, I think.
Yeah, I only remember Berserk once, unless I missed it.
Berserk was so fun. I love ripping shit up with my hands. I wanted more Berserk.
Yeah.
Again, another nitpick, because this mechanic isn't in the game for long, but there's a couple of early levels where there is this purple goo where you can't jump or move, and it fucking sucks. And I don't know what the hell they were thinking about putting that purple goo in the game.
It's in just the one mission, I think, right? The Ark complex mission.
Maybe 1 or 2. It might be 1.
Oh, and the Super Gore Nest. I think it shows up in one area.
Yeah, I just what the fuck was that?
I don't know. It was weird that it was there. Yeah,
It's not there a lot. It's just a little nitpick I had written
just a little,
down.
Yeah. It's one of those things where this sort of goes against all of the rules of the combat of mobility, and it's strange that it was there. Yeah, I mean, I get it. They want you to sort of skate around all that stuff, but it was just sort of annoying.
Maybe it was to encourage. Wait, could you dash in the goo? I can't remember.
Yes, but it didn't work as well.
Okay,
I think.
I don't know. It's just there's that one section where there's a bunch of tentacles and you can't jump, and it's so fucking annoying.
Yeah.
I thought the encounters in Doom Eternal didn't feel as meticulously placed or designed as Doom 2016. I have some really memorable encounters in Doom 2016. There was the Pinky Haste encounter. I have this really vivid memory of where you're in this room with a bunch of containers and it just spawns imps, tons and tons of imps for 10 minutes straight, and you're just trying to get away from these scratchy boys. And Doom Eternal encounters, while I loved them, it just felt a little bit more like a big arena with a shit ton of enemies and you got to get through it.
Interesting.
There just wasn't a huge
I would say
amount.
that that's how I felt about both the games, really.
I just remember more Doom 2016 encounters being a bit more specific and memorable. And a lot of Doom Eternal just kind of felt like, here's a fuck ton of enemies, rip through them. And I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy doing that in Doom Eternal. It just felt sometimes like one of those arena DLCs challenges where it's good fucking luck. Rather than, I don't know, a distinct arena with a clear vision of how they want it to play out. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. There were a few more gimmick encounters almost in the first game where where the Pinkies in Haste and the BFG when you get the BFG for the first time, there's 100 imps just standing in front of you. Yeah. There were a few of those now that I'm remembering. Yeah. My memory isn't quite as fresh with Doom 2016 combat-wise, because I only played...
I love that game.
I mean, I replayed the first half last summer and then finished it off like a month or two ago, but the back half of that game is just giant, endless combat arenas.
And the last thing I want to talk about, just before I go into the last thing, I just want to say the music in this game was just as amazing in Doom as in Doom 2016. Good. And also, like you said at the beginning, the environmental variance is amazing. And just the detail in the environments, they look so good in Doom Eternal. I know it ruins the flow, but I was just standing there looking around for a large portion of the game. It looks so bright. Even though it's like horrible at times, it's so vibrant, and I just love how it looks.
I'm a big fan of the sort of shift in art direction to a more sort of ridiculous and bright and colorful world. Because 2016 is just science laboratories and deserty hell. Yeah, and they really upped the ante with the art.
Yes,
in this game.
Massively.
Yeah.
So my last complaint about the game is just the story stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad. Okay, that's a good transition.
So I started the game reading all the notes. Got to give it another go, and I just found them to be a bit self-serious. The notes. It felt like reading a bunch of like Norse mythology bullshit, and I just didn't know what the hell they were on about, and I just didn't find them that funny. So I just stopped reading them pretty early on, and then because I wasn't reading them, I didn't have a fucking clue what was going on.
Well, I read all the lore because I'm a goofball, and I also had no idea what was going on.
Okay.
Well, that's not entirely. I mean, I could. That's not true. I mean, I could explain to a degree what happened.
There's like a second force, and it's joined up with hell, and they make this energy by taking people off Earth, and they're like a
the hell energy fuels heaven, basically.
Yes,
that's the game.
Argent enemy, and there's two different factions, and it just wasn't that clear. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Again, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Doesn't matter to me. It's Doom. I'm there for one thing, and that's to rip shit up. So I didn't really care, but it felt like the game was trying. So it kind of felt a bit more. I felt more guilty not understanding Doom Eternal than I did in Doom 2016. Because Doom 2016 is very focused, and Doom Eternal feels like it's trying to tell me like quite not ambitious, but there's some fantasy stuff going on, and I had no idea what it was trying to say.
I think it's sort of like an interesting conundrum that they were sort of always going to be stuck with to a degree, and I think a lot of it is like you go to these environments, which they wanted to build, much more crazy and imaginative environments, and then you're like, well, why are you going to these environments? So then they have to come up with stuff, an explanation.
Yeah.
And if the environments had just been like, you're on Earth and you're in hell, back and forth, I feel like you wouldn't have really thought about the story nearly as much as when you go to like weird mystical heaven fantasy world and you're like, what the fuck is going on with the story? And then you go to look into the story and you're like, it's like a 12-part novel about the Sentinel history, and I'm just like, I read it all and I'm like, oh my god, this is exhausting. So it's sort of like a double-edged, like, they made the art more interesting, which meant they had to make the story more elaborate, which then, and you sort of go from looking at the environment to looking at the story, and you're like, the story stuff is probably the worst part of Doom Eternal, which is fine because it's not a Naughty Dog game. But it is a disappointment because 2016 really nailed it in a way that like very little stuff is able to nail this balance between self-serious and goofy. And I mean the main plot of both games is fairly self-serious. Like in 2016 it's crazy lady wants to unleash hell, and Optimus Prime is saying, no, don't do that, I'm a robot man, and you're like, okay, whatever. it's a serious story, but then all the peripheral stuff is where the goofiness comes in, and like the codex entries in that describe the enemies in the last game were like really, they were like so much better than Eternal. The first page of an enemy description would be like a very straightforward and self-serious, and then you would unlock a second and third entry that would just get like progressively goofier, and And just the way that, like, they sort of said no to traditional storytelling from first-person shooters, you know, where Doom Guy just, like, throws the monitor out of the face while Samuel Hayden is expository dialoguing at him. And yeah, just that balancing of tone alongside with very pushed aside storytelling in 2016 was really refreshing.
Yeah.
And really and like masterfully done to a degree where you're like, I sort of knew that they were never going to get it right again, because it's one of those things where it almost feels accidental. And I sort of always expected Eternal to be a letdown in that department because 2016 sort of caught on so much and became so legendary, and a lot of the good parts of the storytelling sort of became like a bit of a meme, you know, with like the rip and tear stuff and the whole intro, and you know, they became very famous and like revered by the community, those moments.
Yeah.
Like punching the monitor, and I sort of expected them to always do what most sequels do to where the first one is sort of tame and the creators aren't sure of themselves and the audience catches on and loves it. The sequels are always sort of a misstep where they're like, let's just double down on all the stuff that the internet likes, and then you get Doom Eternal where like they have this is mainly just the tone stuff. Really, it's just like Doom Eternal, like it's just not very funny. It doesn't balance the humor well. Like the like UAC Blue Hologram Lady dialogue is like actively bad. There were like two of her things that I thought were funny, and then the rest of them are just like, please shut up. And then they undid sort of their design decisions and said like, we're gonna make the story more present and traditionally told, and it's still not a big part of it. You know, you get like a 30-second cutscene at the beginning and end of every level, but there are cutscenes there in a way that there weren't in the last game, and it was definitely just sort of a letdown. But it's like, oh well, whatever. I wasn't here for the story, but it was a disappointment regardless.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is too bad. I think the one mission where they absolutely nail everything about the storytelling and tone is the BFG 10,000 mission.
That's so good.
The build up to that mission where it's like, you can't just yada yada yada, and then Vega's like, we're just gonna do that, and then the Doom Guy intimidating everyone, and the fact that they have a fucking BFG 10,000, that whole mission is like perfect Doom humor and storytelling. And the rest of that game, it is comparatively not very good.
It would have been nice to have more of those moments, because it was like really theatrical and cinematic and giant and big, and I really enjoyed that stuff. Just a couple of, I was going to list off just some more positives to finish off.
Okay, well, let me list my few negatives that I wished I had mentioned before we end on a positive note, because Doom Eternal is very good. I actually kind of dislike that they just so blatantly tell you what the weak points are.
Yes, that was interesting.
It's just like, let me just figure that out, because it's not complicated for any of them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like the Arachnotron has a giant gun on its head, shoot it, and like it would have taken me the first encounter and I would have learned that, and it would have felt like more like I was discovering them. And I also like when a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, where it's like you fight the boss or you fight an enemy, you can sort of figure out what the weak points are, but then once you've fought them, you go into the journal and you see like, yes, okay, they're weak to this, and then it sort of feels more natural. And because this game has the weak point explanations in the codex after you've fought them, and more detail is added the more you fight them, and it just felt weird that they're just like, here's how you do it. And it was the same for the like bosses, which there aren't really any. The bosses in this game are just sort of mediocre compared to the last game as well. I liked the boss fights in the last game, and this one they're just sort of like, I mean, they're just mini bosses really until the last two, which are both just like very basic boss fights. Shoot a giant thing, but it just was weird where it's like the gladiator this is exactly how he works for this boss
I was about
fight.
to say, I had the pop-up for the gladiator happen before I got in the arena. And I clicked on it, and it just showed me the gladiator, like his like the index
his
thing,
shield, and,
his codex. And I was like, wait, I haven't even got to the fight yet. I want to see him in this fucking cinematic, and now see what it looks like. God damn it!
Yeah, I don't like being told. I would much rather have just have it discovered for myself. Small thing. Another small thing. I miss. Eternal is much more video gamey, which I'm okay with, because too many games often are trying to be too cinematic and seamless and all this shit, and I'm totally fine with Eternal being more video gamey. But I did like in 2016 how they would incorporate really seamlessly upgrades into the world, where it would be like when you get the double jump. You're discovering a pair of boots in a laboratory and putting the boots on. When you get a gun, it's a Marine is holding the machine gun, and you pick the gun up from the Marine. Whereas in this, you get the machine gun because it's a giant green machine gun floating in midair, and it's just like, now you have a machine gun. And it's like such a small thing, and I think that change completely works for what Doom Eternal is as a whole. There were like one or two times where you do seamlessly get something new, like when you get the super shotgun, or the BFG, and I missed. I always like that in a game where you just seamlessly discover something in the world and it becomes part of your arsenal. The last two, which are very mildly spoilerish, very very mild though. The Unmaker was not good.
Unmaker.
The thing you get for beating all the Slayer gates, the alternate BFG.
I kind of liked playing around with it for a little bit.
I think if it just like sounded better, I might have liked it more. Like it seems like the DPS is pretty good, but it's just going to like yeah, and it was just going to like a bit of a slightly disappointing payoff because it looks really cool and you're slowly unlocking it.
Yeah.
And, the BFG is just way better. The last one, setup, I don't know if I should blame myself or the game. It felt like they were showing it in a way and setting things up in a way that my brain sort of expected this to happen. They put a giant fucking Doomslayer Jaeger machine in your sick space fortress.
Oh, right.
And you don't use it.
Yeah.
I was pissed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Maybe that's DLC though. There are going to be 2 DLC expansions.
One thing
I thought it was funny that they built such a blatant Jaeger, because I guess Hugo Martin, prior to working at id, he worked in film and like was one of the main designers of the Jaegers from Pacific Rim, which I didn't realize. And so to see that, I was like, wow, they're just doing Pacific Rim now in Doom, and because those things are all over that game as well. Like they're like frozen off in the skyboxes.
Yeah.
And they look really fucking cool, and I wanted, but you got to say something for the third game. I get it.
Yeah.
You just better pay it off, id.
One thing you reminded me of is, again, this is a minor spoiler, but there is a section in the game where you play as a Revenant, which is obviously like a little bit of advertising for their multiplayer mode, which I get.
Right.
But it happened once, and I was like, that was a fun little side thing to do for a couple of minutes, and then just never do it again. And it's weird that it just happens once. And I was like, this would be a nice pacing thing where there's like a no-stakes mini combat section where you get to possess all the monsters, all the demons you can possess in the multiplayer mode, which I assume there was more than the Revenant.
Yeah, it would have been clever, because the ones you can play in the multiplayer, it's the Revenant, Mancubus, Marauder, and...
Oh, the Marauder, that's cool.
And the Cacodemon.
Oh, yeah, I would have liked to just try all those 4 out, because I don't really
so I think it's only
play.
those 4, so, you add 3 more sections. It would have been a smart little mini training for the...
advertisement for the mode, some pacing, a pacing mechanic. Just a small thing.
Yeah. It was just a strange one-off, but...
And also, let's go the negatives out of the way. I really did enjoy the entire last level of Doom Eternal. They turned everything up to 11, and it just never let up, and I absolutely loved it. For some reason, it might have been me being inefficient, But I found the second phase of the last boss to really go on for a long time. I don't know if I was just being bad, but I was just in the cycle of, chainsaw to stay alive, shoot. He just had a lot of health, and by the end of it, I was like, oof. I never want to do this on Nightmare because it takes me so fucking long that I don't want to have to go through this again. And, I was playing on Hurt Me Plenty, so I didn't die. But Jesus Christ, it went on.
I think just that boss fight in general is just not very interesting. You just shoot him. Whatever.
Also, I don't really know if I like the buff totems and the archviles, just because I was like fucking diving around the battlefield, like, where is this thing? Like, I just want to get rid of it so I can get back. I just found them.
They're sort of redundant, I felt like.
I like again, it's kind of like the Marauder, where I like the idea of the archville, like someone really scary that summons a bunch of shit and you got to get rid of him first. But like, his big old shield was really annoying, so you just like get behind him and he's not doing anything. I just kind of found buff totems and the archville just like a little bit, I don't know, they were just a bit annoying.
A little meh, yeah. I'm glad that they don't show up much. There's like, 3 totems and, 5 archviles or something. Yeah. That's about it,
but let's quickly go into some positives to end off on a, because I feel like I've said a bunch of negatives, and it's mainly because the biggest positive of the game is the combat, which is 80% of the game. Yeah. It just doesn't sound like I've been praising it that much because I'm mostly nitpicking, and the main core of the game I really, really enjoy. But some more positives. I love the new repertoire of weapons. The arsenal you have in this game is really fun. You have the 2 versions of the BFG, and even though the core BFG is better, I still enjoyed using the Unmaker a little bit to mix things up, and the Crucible is fucking awesome. Love the Crucible. And I love the I don't know what his castle's called, the Doom base.
Oh yeah, the Fortress of Doom.
That's it. I like it. That's fun. It's a nice.
So much fun personality.
Yeah, it's a nice like chill moment, a bit of respite or cool down, slowly unlocking things. Which are, I wish there was some better rewards behind those doors, except for like more suit tokens, which you don't really need. But apart from that, it was cool. I like the Doom Fortress. I really liked it.
I love his room with like the guitars and the weapons and the toys and the stupid giant gaming monitors, and it's very silly.
Yeah, I think the only complaint I have about the Doom Fortress is the Ripatorium is so far away that I never used it because I couldn't be fucking bothered to go down there. And it forces you to use a lift when you could just jump down there. I'm like, I'm not getting on that lift.
I would have liked to see, I can see them expand. I would hope they expand on the Ripatorium more in the future. Because the combat's good, and having some reason to go back to it would be neat, I think.
So, my conclusion, my overall thoughts of Doom Eternal, if we have to pick a side, I am going to say that I like Doom 2016 more than I liked Doom Eternal.
That's fair. For me, I would regard both of them as equals in different ways, I would say. Like, I think they live beside each other very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I was forced to choose between them, I would pick Eternal every day of the week. But I think both games are amazing, and both games offer different experiences really well. Yeah.
I just had a more fluent and seamless fun time with 2016 than I did with Eternal. There was just a couple of roadblocks for me with Eternal. And not necessarily talking about the intro. I actually overall came to appreciate the learning curve that I had to go through at the beginning. It's more just, I had some issues with getting stuck in combat. I didn't like some of the aspects of blah, blah, blah. And I just didn't really have that with 2016. My memories of 2016 are so pure. It's just almost perfection for me, 2016. And the only thing I could ask from 2016 is just a bit more variety in certain sections. But the stuff that is in there, I almost have no complaints about. And with Doom Eternal, I had a couple of roadblocks that ruined the flow for me. And that's something I kind of value quite a lot in Doom. So, yeah, I'm on Team 2016, but really, really loved Doom Eternal. A couple of issues here and there, which I wish weren't there, because I think I would have had a better time if they weren't there. But the evolution of the combat worked for me. I know it didn't work for some people, but it took me a little while, but I connected with it, and I had a good ripping time.
It extremely worked for me, and I love
Nice.
it. I love the combat in that game. The flow worked for me nonstop. Like from like I said, from like 5 minutes into the first level, I was on board, and I never felt like I got interrupted or lost it throughout the entire game, which was really nice to play, to have that experience.
I think it's personality based as well, because I'm not much of a try hard guy. Not calling you a sweaty boy, but you know me, I just don't really like trying hard in games. I just don't.
Yeah, and I like I said, also like first person shooters are the ones that I play the most, and the way that you enjoy a stressful FromSoft game, like it's nice for me to play a first person shooter that is asking me to be 100% on my game the entire time.
Yeah, and that is not really my type of thing.
Yeah.
So, because I kind of, there was a bit of sourness about not being able to just jump into Doom at 2 a.m. without being like, I'm tired, I don't feel good at the game.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that they at least took the sequel in a different direction and didn't just make it a giant expansion pack. It might have split the community in a small way, but I think that's a good way to treat a sequel, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, most first-person shooters to me feel too easy. And I don't like you can turn the difficulty up, but it never feels, it's just like, oh, the enemies just hit like 7 times harder.
Yes.
And it's not engaging.
Yeah.
Whereas Doom Eternal felt like it was nice to play a first-person shooter where it just felt like I had to be moving at 100 miles an hour the entire time.
And they commit to that, by the way, because I went from ultra violence down to hurt me plenty, and it changed nothing. By the way, it changes nothing.
Yeah.
You just take
more damage in the higher difficulty.
And I even played on the lowest difficulty when I left one of the collectibles at the end of the level. I completely missed one, and I was like, fuck's sake, I'm just going to put it down to the easiest difficulty and run through the level. And it's still the same game. Those enemies are all over you like a bad rash, and you still gotta. You even can't be that sloppy in that mode. You still have to, you have to be a little bit on. So I can understand
which I love. I'm
why people are, maybe a bit annoyed, because there is no escaping what they want you to do in that game.
For sure, yeah. But I think I was glad to listen to a few of the interviews with Hugo Martin and Marty Stratton.
That sounds right.
Marty Stratton, I think, is the other guy's name. Where they were talking about how 2016. They, as game designers, felt sort of annoyed with some of the failings of 2016 that they regarded as failings, in that they would see people just, steamrolling through the game with these different, with like the same 3 weapons, and how the last third is just like sort of lazy combat design, like combat encounters that are really easy to sort of knock out. And I was glad to have watched those, because it definitely gives you a sense of what they wanted to accomplish with Eternal, and I think that they, for me, absolutely nailed it, and I had an absolutely fucking amazing time playing this game,
and I did too.
And I'm very happy with it. Very, very happy.
I had a really great time about 80 to 75% of the time, which is good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I had a very good time.
That was a long Doom chat. I'm sort of surprised.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe I'm not surprised. I don't know. I feel like the games that we like a lot, we talk a long time about.
Yeah, and also there was
in a few
on.
cases, like Death Stranding, it's maybe a bit of a confused, long babbling conversation.
I think there was just more going on in Doom Eternal than I expected.
Yeah.
If it would just been 2016 with more stuff, it would have been a pretty short review.
Yeah, and I think we would have said it's very good.
Yeah.
I think we would have said like, it's more Doom.
More Doom, that's good.
Doom 2016 was really good. One thing I also mentioned in a review that I forgot to mention.
Sorry, go on.
What?
I was just watching Doc, and he just playing Overwatch, and he pushed himself off the map with his shotgun.
God, playing Ash.
Sorry, yeah, you go on.
2016 also had the advantage of being an amazing surprise.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And the surprise aspect really it does add a lot to the sort of long-term memory of a game. I think.
Yeah. That's part of it for me.
Like Horizon, you look at Horizon Zero Dawn, and I think that's another one of those games where it's like, wow, I was shocked.
And God of War, yeah.
Game. And God of War, and Doom 2016 was one of those. When we they didn't send out review copies, and you and I were like, if there were some whisperings going on like an hour after Doom came out on Steam, some people were like, oh, this game might be really good, and then we sort of hesitantly bought it and started playing it, and it was like, oh,
yes,
oh, Doom is incredible.
I wish expectations didn't affect games, but unfortunately they kind of do a little bit.
I mean that's all art is that way.
Yes.
Expectations and life and experience have huge effect on the way you interpret things.
And you can't really do much about that. It just happens.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, though I do wish, I wish there was a way to just like forget, or
yeah.
I don't know. If you went into Doom Eternal in the same circumstances as 2016, where if let's say if Doom 2016 hadn't come out and Doom Eternal was the game that released, it would still have been hugely, I think it would have been an amazing game and regarded very highly, but 2016 is a better surprise in how it's designed as well, and like the presentation and the story stuff in 2016 is so much better than Eternal. Even like the first 15 minutes of Eternal compared to 2016, it's like 2016 is a masterpiece and Eternal is just sort of almost a little messy, in fact. And I think under the same circumstances, Eternal would not have hit the way that 2016 did.
Interesting.
I think.
I wonder how Doom Eternal is for people who have never played Doom. Like, is it more difficult?
I wonder. I wonder how Doom Eternal is for a lot of people who aren't very good at games.
Yeah. Fuck.
Not naming names. Because I actually do know how it is for those people, and it sounds like it's bad. Because they're bad. Which,
Suck to suck, dude.
I ain't surprised. It sucks to suck. Like, yeah, exactly. Get fucked.
You should definitely include that little part in the official review.
Oh, I will.
Alright. So, it's time for Half-Life Alyx, and we have got our friend Ben in. Hello, Ben.
Hi. Hey, guys. How's it going?
Going well, dude. Going well. So, where the fuck do you start with Half-Life Alyx?
They made a new Half-Life game.
Yeah.
After 13 years, and it's VR only.
Yeah, I remember we were actually recording some Modern Warfare something when the news broke. And I'll be honest, I didn't really care that much. I don't know what's happened to me, but I've been...
because you're miserable.
Yeah, I've been on the VR train since the Developer Kit 2.
I was, and 2014 is when I bought that thing.
Yeah, and I have become a really cynical old man when it comes to virtual reality. Even though at the beginning I was a fanatic. I was so excited, and I think everyone has a virtual reality honeymoon period. But I got really sour on VR, and I think the format as a whole has really kind of disappointed me in its potential. And I started to get a little bit negative about just how far you could take it. And I think it's because I never had any luck with like a natural movement in VR, like walking around using the analog stick. It always made me want to vomit. So I was like, well, if you can't do that without people feeling sick, then you're kind of limited to these very specific circumstances. Like I really loved Lone Echo, which is a zero gravity game, so it works because your feet aren't on the ground, so it doesn't make me want to vomit. And Super Hot, where you're teleporting around. So I was just a bit negative about the format of VR working in just a normal-ish video game. Does that make any sense? Like where you're moving around and you're shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was also like at a phase where I was pretty uninterested in VR as well, because I mean I've been on the train as long as you have.
A bit longer.
Got that. Yeah, technically a couple months longer, and since August of 2018, I have not played a VR game.
Yeah.
Been VRless.
I had the headset for another full year after that before giving it to Ben, selling it to Ben. And in that year that I literally didn't even have it hooked up. And then another 9 months passed since last August when I sent that to you, and it was just like, VR. The problem for me with VR was that there were no compelling games. There were no games, experiences as a whole, that were interesting enough to me to even bother plugging my headset in, which is unfortunate, but it's just sort of the way that VR development has gone. You know, there was an initial rush. There were a couple of good games. After years
of demos.
Yep, after years of tech demos, there were like a couple good games. And then everyone realized they made no money from making their VR games because the barrier to entry is obscene. And the last 3 years, it's just been real boring for VR, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But Half-Life Alyx is mostly not boring.
No.
That took a weird kind of...
I don't know.
You said there was a word in there that you said that was interesting to me, and I think Joe and I are kind of on the same kind of page. You know what I mean?
This is going to be an interesting talk because
and...
I kind of thought Half-Life Alyx was like the best thing ever.
I mean, Half-Life Alyx is very fucking good.
I really liked Half-Life Alyx.
I did too. Don't get me wrong. No. I think we're all more or less in agreement here that Half-Life Alyx is a high quality experience. I think.
Oofa doofa dude. Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah.
Ben echoes that sentiment. Yeah.
Certainly.
I mean, I have things to say, but
who's starting?
I don't know.
Let's dance, boys. Let's dance. I'll talk for. I'll go. I'll
do
jump
it.
Out. I'll
How does
step
this
on
compare to
toes.
Gorn?
So, when we look at the two kind of
Ben is a professional
VR
Gorn player, by the way.
So my experience with the VR thus far mostly centered around Gorn, and a little bit of Beat Saber, but mostly Gorn for sure.
For 9 months, 9 months of Gorn.
Talked about Asgard's Wrath a little bit at one point, but that was just a lapse. You know what I mean? That was a breather from Gorn.
Yeah.
So can we just talk about Gorn instead of Half-Life?
Sure,
I feel like that has more cultural
more
relevance right
game.
now. Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar with Gorn, please go look it up and you'll understand why.
I'll put a little clip of the trailer in it.
For sure.
People will understand immediately.
So Half-Life's a little bit of a slower pace than Gorn. We slow things down a bit, and there's characters who talk a little more than they do in Gorn.
Probably a little more than they need to.
So I'd never played a Half-Life. No, I'm just joking. So I've played all the Half-Life games leading up to this point. So this was obviously a lot of excitement, but of course a lot of trepidation.
Not to interrupt, but I just want to also get everyone. So
interrupt away.
I would say, I think I can speak for all of us and say that none of us are like desperate Half-Life fans. I think I think Joe. I don't know where Ben falls on Half-Life.
I'm a big Half-Life.
So maybe we just establish that as well.
I'm a large Half-Life fan.
I love Half-Life.
First modern PC game I ever played was Half-Life 2. I bought a disc, slid it into my PC, and it made me download Steam, and I was never more confused in my entire life.
I bet.
It took me 4 days to download Steam and Half-Life 2.
Nice.
On dial-up connection back in the day. And I just couldn't believe it. I played a little bit of it, a little bit of Half-Life Team Deathmatch.
Yes, that was my first PC game.
Yeah, back in the day. And then it just turned out that my neighbors at the time were more into like PC gaming than they were console gaming. So they were big fans of Gary's Mod and Half-Life Team Deathmatch as well. So that really helped stoke my interest in Steam and then Valve and Half-Life and everything that goes along with it.
Okay. I'm glad I've asked this because I wasn't. I don't
good preface.
know.
Good to preface, I suppose.
And it's important. And Joe likes Half-Life.
Yes, big fan.
I would say that I don't give a shit.
No,
I only just played them for the first time after 13 years of trying to play them and falling asleep at the keyboard every time. I finally committed to beating them, and they're fine.
Wow,
so we were going. They're pretty well. Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good.
They're
bud.
Fine. They're fine.
So
So go ahead.
That's
all I wanted to say.
Flash forward to 2020. We get our first Half-Life game in what is now 7 or 8 years?
13 years.
13 years.
Fucking
2007 was episode 2, if you can believe it.
Yeah. Anyway. So
we're all gonna die one day.
So trepidatious going into it, and but boy howdy, it does not. We we said a lot via text as we were all playing it, and we all stuck to pretty good timelines as far as playing it goes. We were able to chat a little bit here and there, but nothing too deep, so we could get to this point. But one thing that echoed very early on was that it is definitely a Half-Life game, which is silly to say, I know, but the fact that they got it 13 years later with a completely different platform, is pretty remarkable. In case you somehow still don't know, you play Alyx Vance, who has been prevalent since Half-Life 2, and so the events of this take place 5 years for episode 2. And so you're Alyx Vance, and you are just working your way through City 17 at the direction of your dad Eli and another guy, and you get some cool tools and guns along the way, and away you go. And they do. I know Jameson alluded to the word boring, and I want to talk about that word for a second.
Okay.
Because I felt that from chapters 1 through 4.
Yeah, I can see that
for sure. Which I would chalk up almost to it being
So the first 4 hours of that game, the first 4 chapters, which are the first 3-ish hours, I would say, are a very long tutorial. Basically.
Yeah, and
that's fine, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to discredit it as useless. I think they tried to offer something that was easy to do for people who are experienced with VR, but also something that was introductory for folks with VR.
That
I think
was,
as well.
Yeah. That was my thought process. I assumed it was slow because they knew that a lot of people had bought an index just for Alyx, and a lot of people probably they probably dabbled in some tech things before, but this was most likely a lot of people's first full VR game. So I assumed the slow nature of the first chapters was introductory for not only, new Alyx players, because there are a couple of systems to get used to and controls, and I actually found that by the time the game ramps up combat-wise, I actually found that pacing to be pretty perfect, where I was just feeling competent. But yeah, I think a lot of it was also because this is probably people's first ever VR game, at least a full one anyway.
Yeah, I think in the moment, a lot of the first 4 chapters are really boring.
Yeah,
but as a whole, it makes a lot of sense because it is acclimatizing you to all of it. Because it's not just getting your VR legs back, which I hadn't had for a long time, so I was actually glad to acclimatize to it. But it's also easing you into, like Joe said, the different controls and mechanics, which are important, but also the tone and style of the game, and the sort of more somewhat higher intensity nature of aspects of Half-Life Alyx, aka the sort of, for us, I would say the sort of very, very light horror-ish aspects, which some people will find a lot more intense than others. But so as a whole, I look, the first 4 chapters in the moment, boring. As a whole, you're like, I get it, I understand, and I appreciate the fact that they slowly ramped me into all of this. And to jump around as well, I think the writing also reflects that as well. In the moment, I was like, man, I'm really not interested in all this Firewatch-ass dialogue that's happening constantly. But it makes sense to me also because it's familiar, jokey, basic dialogue, which is it's comfortable, right? And then from chapter 5 onwards, they're like, okay, let's do away with a lot of the dialogue. Let's start to push the story forward, and let's make the gameplay much more involved. The training wheels have come off, and a lot of my problems with the first 4 chapters are sort of gone now.
Dissolved
that I've seen the whole picture.
Yeah. Which is so interesting how it's a testament to, I think, as Joe said, how well paced the whole thing really ends up being. I wonder really how many passes they took, because there's obviously a couple different different staples in there. But
that's the thing, they
really smooth. They must have it's so smooth. It's kind of getting lost talking about it, but it is such a well paced all the way through to the end. I was really, really pleased with the structure and the work that must have went into finding that with this medium. I thought was really well done.
That's sort of how I feel about every single thing about the game as an entirety. Honestly, is that it's that's what Valve is sort of famous for, is they spend a long time making their games and they play test the ever-loving hell out of it, and they refine it all to be like meticulously like perfectly accessible for everyone. And that is how I feel about everything in the game, where it's just like everything in this game is paced perfectly and meant to feel as good as possible to as many people as possible. And that's a good thing. That's not a negative, you know, and and to do it in VR is, I think, a really important thing, and something that most, maybe even all VR games have not actually done.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion, you know, it was like, oh, it's the return to Half-Life. It means they want to revolutionize things and, you know, do crazy mechanics. And in the reality, I think actually Alyx is kind of like mechanically a pretty basic VR game.
Yep.
But what is important about Alyx is that they have made every single part of it feel as good as possible.
Yeah.
And they took all the learnings from the last 6 years, and every best practice is in here and executed. And that is really important. And it reminds me a lot of like a Naughty Dog game, where they're just, you know, like the gameplay maybe isn't the most amazing thing, but it is accessible and enjoyable to everyone. And that's sort of all of Alyx in a nutshell to me, in a lot of ways.
You said executed well, and that's really, I think, what it was all about. Like, going over those passes, I think, I like to think that they, every time they went through it, somebody was like, well, what if you could do this here? Or what if you could not? And they just found a way to make that work. And like, there's a lot of little things, like from how good it feels to flick a thing towards you and catch it with the gravity gloves, man. Like,
that is the best thing in a video game in a long time.
How remarkable and how intuitive was that once you really, like, I'm going to try and push myself to see how fast I can do this with both hands. And then really just looking around and throwing things at yourself to catch, like, how good it all felt. And, like, I found myself, like, probably midway through the game, I just wrapped up a decent fight with the Combine. I was working my way towards the vault. And I was like, it's really not that. I can understand how you could do this easily. Like, obviously, where the player's positioned and you just aim your hand and you press the button and flick, and that's the only input you need to kind of trigger, like, something flying towards you and going to the perfect side of the screen to swipe and catch. But it's the fact that they got it right so well. And every time, like, obviously, if you're obstructed, stuff's not going to fucking fly in your hand. But, basically 99% of the time it works.
Yeah, there's
tremendously.
I believe there's some tracking to your hand, and it's also very generous with the catching.
Very generous.
One thing I really liked about the gravity, I think he calls them the Russells, but the gravity gloves. I really like when a game solves a problem by making a tool. The problem being that, you know, some people don't have the room scale and they can't, you know, run up and grab an item that's high up on a shelf, or maybe they just don't want to. Maybe people want to stay still.
Yeah.
I like that they solved that problem within the context of Half-Life. They made a tool which matches the story, and also Half-Life is known for physics, simulation and messing around with physics, and they kind of bundled that all into one problem-solving thing, and I appreciate that. I like that smart problem-solving in game design.
Yeah. And the fact that they feel so good is why Alyx is good.
Yes.
Really. Because that mechanic is actually in Boneworks.
Oh, okay.
Boneworks, you can aim at something and then you click a button and something flies to your hand. But like everything else in Boneworks, it feels like fucking crap.
Whoa, all right, he's saying it. I haven't played it.
I gotta try that. I gotta try that game out.
Yeah, me too.
I gotta try it.
And that's Alyx for me, is just like everything feels great. Because like I went, and the other day I installed the two games that people have talked about as being really good, one of which is Boneworks, and the other is the Walking Dead Saints and Sinners.
Yeah, I want to download that as well. I meant to download that.
And I wanted to see how they felt. Again, I wanted to give Boneworks slightly more time, and I wanted to see how the two felt compared to Alyx's, and also because they both have melee combat, which is something Alyx does not have, and it's sort of been, you know, regarded as a bit of a bizarre oversight. And I think the reason they don't have melee combat in this game is because it feels like fucking dog shit in VR.
No feedback.
Boneworks and Half-Life, have melee combat.
No.
Well, there's a difference between hand, like... Well, no, I guess Gorn does have weapons, right? Yeah. But, like...
Different strokes for folks.
Walking Dead has, they give you, like, a knife that you can stab into things, and they give you an axe you can use. And they both just feel like shit to me, honestly. And it's because there's no, momentum stopping, right? There's no weight to anything. And you can't emulate that with haptic feedback or vibrations, whereas guns work because vibration is good, right? And obviously there's no kickback in your arm or bursting your eardrums with noise, but like I think that is why something like melee combat isn't in Alyx, is because for a lot of people melee stuff just feels bad in VR, and nothing in Alyx feels bad, and that is like extremely important because so much stuff in so many VR games just feels terrible to me.
Yeah,
like you have full modeled arms in Walking Dead, and it looks terrible, because your elbows are like twitching and your wrists are like bent at 120 degrees, and you're like, this looks so janky and feels bad. And Boneworks, you have a fully modeled character model, including chest, legs, and head. And like, I'm a little taller than most people. I couldn't walk through a door in Boneworks because my head invisibly was hitting the ceiling. And I was like, what is going on? And it felt like shit. And you never, ever have that in Alyx. And that is super important.
Yeah, but I think you could kind of have a counter argument that, grabbing a pipe and it not doing anything also kind of feels weird at the same time.
True, yeah. Especially in that specific scene as well, where they're like, the pipe is there and you have to pull it out.
Oh man,
and
I was so lost, dude.
You.
I was so lost. Jameson was watching me do that section. I don't know if you were paying attention, but I had no idea to get that pipe. No clue.
Oh, no. I meant like at the very beginning of the game when you're in the train.
Never mind, then. Yeah, I was like,
and you pull the pipe out to open up the doors.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then a zombie starts walking at you in the train, and you have a pipe in your hand, and it doesn't work. And you're right, Joe. That for a lot of people, it will feel wrong.
I feel like there was some middle ground to be found, where how when you are. I actually only noticed this from your recent video, Jameson, where if you try to block something with. You try to block a bullet with an object, Alyx drops it when it gets hit. I feel like they could have found a middle ground where if you try to hit something, the enemy just swats it out of your hand, so it's futile to try and use melee weapons.
Which they do, but it's not very clear.
I feel like there could have been something to kind of counter them, so you just don't want to use them. Or just
don't put them in the game.
Don't put a plunger in the game if I can't swat a fucking head crab with it.
I agree. Like, don't put a pipe and a zombie walking at you in a straight line. It's so clearly set up for grab the pipe and swing and hit it. My other thought with the melee stuff is also that they're waiting to figure it out because they have to save it for the sequel when you have a crowbar.
Right.
I mean, I thought that in chapter 5 before I knew anything about the story and or what they were going to do in the future. It's like they're gonna do melee combat for the next game where you probably play as Gordon. That was what I thought 3 hours into that game. But anyways, what should we talk about? I don't know.
I want to talk about one thing.
Please.
Yes.
I just want to quickly say that, just a little anecdote, before I jumped into Alyx, I replayed the entire franchise.
Yes,
I played Black Mesa, the remake of Half-Life 1, then Episode 2, Half-Life 2, then Episode 1 and Episode 2. And then I played Alyx, I think the same day as I beat Episode 2, or the very next day. And I just want to quickly say that opening scene where you are just standing in City 17 with the Citadel being built in front of you. Being in that world directly after spending 30 hours in its, in 2 dimensions and on the old Source engine and looking kind of a little bit dated is one of the most bizarre experiences I've ever had in my gaming life.
For sure,
I didn't look at the gaming trailers of Alyx at all. I think I looked at it again, like I said, when me and Jameson it was first announced. I had a peek when we were doing our Modern Warfare recording, and then I have not looked at anything since. So I didn't really have any idea about the graphical fidelity of Half-Life Alyx. I had no idea the game was going to look good. So it was one of the most jarring things to not only jump into the Half-Life universe in virtual reality and be standing there after spending so much time playing it, but to also look so lifelike. It was incredibly bizarre. It was indescribable. And I think the first hour of Half-Life Alyx is something I will probably never forget, just because it was trippy. It was very trippy.
Oh, no.
I had that a little bit as well, because I finished episode 2 like 2 or 3 days beforehand. And it was really amazing to go into VR and see everything in VR. And I think a sort of broader thought on that is that, like, Half-Life for me works so much better in VR. I sort of recounted my feelings on Half-Life in, I think, the latest podcast that we put up a couple weeks ago. And I said it, you know, by modern standards, I think for me, Half-Life is just kind of a bit boring. And I like the world and the storytelling a lot, and the way that stuff is presented. And I, of course, I totally respect Half-Life and understand its importance, but under modern circumstances, it's kind of dull for me. And Half-Life Alyx is neat because it is exactly like the old games in its structure and in the combat encounters and the level design. Or, well, the level design is a little more interesting at times in Alyx. But, like, if you took the VR out of Alyx would be a very beautiful, very well-made, boring-ass video game. But
I'd still like it.
In VR, yeah. I would have still enjoyed it too, mainly for the story stuff, and some good gameplay gimmicks for sure.
Yeah,
that would be fun. Well, they wouldn't be as good as. But what I'm saying is, Half-Life in VR works so much more for me, and it's so much more compelling. The world is more compelling. The gameplay sort of combat loop of, like, combat, light horror, mild puzzle solving, somewhat basic linear, super linear, you know, action adventure. It just all works so much more for me in VR.
Oh, yeah.
And the worst thing I have to say about Half-Life Alyx is it's a very negative thing in my mind, is that Alyx kind of turned me into a bit of a Half-Life fan. And I was like, fuck. Now I actually like care about the story stuff and the world and but that was achieved because of VR.
Put you in there.
The visual fidelity cannot be praised enough as well, because it is staggeringly beautiful throughout. The amount of micro detail in every scene, the lighting quality is the texture quality, it's nuts throughout.
The fidelity for my game was on auto to start, but then when I went and changed it just today when I was going in there to do a bit of recording, it allowed me to change it to a preset that wouldn't automatically adjust, which the default was to automatic. So I'm gonna go back in my second playthrough and play it on high fidelity, just to really get an appreciation. And I'm also gonna play it on a harder difficulty for sure.
Yeah, that game is easy.
Yeah,
very easy.
It's very easy. Too easy.
Yep. I don't think I ever died.
I definitely did.
I died once or twice.
I fell and died, and I was killed by someone called Jeff, which I won't spoil. But I don't think I died in combat.
Jeff's silly. Jeff's a silly boy.
I died once or twice. Early when I was, like, fumbling with the controls.
Yes, I should say that. I probably did as well at the beginning.
Yeah.
It was frustrating. I was getting frustrated trying to figure out a control scheme that worked. But then once I was like, stop moving and then teleport and then move, that's when I just had to slow down.
I think that's why the first 4 hours work so well, because I think most people probably experimented with the movement mechanics and what works best for them.
Well, and getting used to, like, having to physically hide behind cover, you know.
Oh man, they do that well too, don't they?
But yeah, I one of the notes I do have here is, like, it's way too easy on normal. You get so much stuff in that game, like
a lot of healing,
a lot of chapter ammo coming on the end.
Oh my god! From like chapter 6 onwards, like, I had so much ammo. I had so much health, like, stored. Like, I would just throw syringes on the ground in the middle of an area and be like, if I need it, I'll come back for it. And I never needed it. I had like 200 rounds of pistol and SMG ammo for the last couple of levels. Like, the problem is you just pull out your pistol, and the only upgrade you need on your pistol is a laser sight. And you just shoot like 7 bullets into everything and they die, and it is definitely way too easy. But again, that's one of those things where it's like, I get it. I get why they've done that. it's for accessibility. But
and it's satisfying.
I would have enjoyed if it was a little more like a Resident Evil game in the first half, where you are the first half of a Resident Evil game, where you really have to manage your bullets, and a little more survival horror-y. I think would work for
maybe
them.
even run from an enemy if you need to.
They give you that vibe in that first trailer when you're scrounging for a couple of shotgun shells on the shelf.
Exactly.
That like ammo is going to be quite scarce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not sure what the higher difficulties do. I think they just increase damage, but I would love if they deleted like 50% of all the items in the game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Part of me was thinking that the loot boxes. Sorry. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, loot boxes.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Were had a little bit of that old AI director. We'll give you what you need as you need it. Type. I had that feeling about halfway through the game that these boxes are set up to give you what you need when you need it, which is great.
Yeah, I wonder.
I wasn't sure about that. I was thinking that as well.
Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Left 4 Dead.
You did it with Left 4 Dead. Yeah, do it with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you got the tech.
Yeah, it would have made the whole thing more stressful, and I like. Higher damage is just sort of like a boring solution to difficulty, and I think more deliberately placed and thought out health drops and ammo drops would be a much more fun
and proper
experience.
AI tuning for difficulty as well. You know what I mean? Like put those guys, like, why aren't they crouching behind cover? Like they're just
that's the other thing that I was thinking of when I said boring is like I think the Combine combat is super boring.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I don't think it's super boring, but it is my one single complaint about the entire game is I felt like, especially near the game, I got into a bit of a rhythm where you had the laser sights, you know how to crouch behind cover, and it just kind of comes to peek out, blah, 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 they're dead, and then kind of move on. It got more fun when I got the shotgun grenade launcher. That made combat really fun.
So much fun.
I feel like in the very last quarter of the game, maybe just another tool to mix up combat, especially for the Combine, because they introduce another enemy, which I won't spoil, near the end quarter, and I really liked fighting those guys because, they're different, and they have a different mechanic to take them down.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
They are not humanoid.
Yeah, the last kind of enemy that's introduced in the game in a zoo-type setting.
Yeah, their name is
the
compound.
antlions.
Okay,
Okay, just say it.
Okay.
It's a Half-Life game. There are antlions.
Okay, you said it. But yeah, I like they were great.
But even
for
they were
pacing
pretty easy.
because but they're just different. They're
Yeah,
little
but you
weak
gotta
spots.
shoot their legs, and then they're flying around. Yeah, there was a bit when I understood how to kill an antlion, I was like, oh fuck, that's actually like better.
Yeah.
Thank you for making this a challenge.
I like that they got more in your face, whereas the Combine, it's mainly the Combine that are just, I think, are boring.
I'd agree.
Because, the zombies, they shamble towards you, and that's fine, and the head crabs get up in your face, which is good, but the Combine just sort of stand there.
The Combine know they're gonna die at your hands, so they're not.
So
they're kind of just
they're
like,
the only sentient ones in the game, so they know.
They're literally calling you by name to kill them, so.
Yeah. They would just stand there, and it's like, well, I don't need to... there was that great clip in the gameplay, one of the gameplay videos where they like open a door for cover,
Yeah, I love doing that.
A card, and I'm like, I never did that because I just stood behind a fucking wall and leaned over and shot them all in the head, and then they all died because they weren't pushing me, which is unfortunate.
Well, there was the one Combine where you could explode his gas tank. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
That I like that, but that's the only one that's actually interesting.
And he did like a little something else, especially near the last quarter where you have fought them quite a lot at that point.
Yeah, they give you that. Yeah. They give you that fourth gun way too early on.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one gimmick weapon at the very, very end, but apart from that,
which was very good.
It's very.
We'll talk about. We will do. I do want to do a spoiler
Okay.
section, which we will clearly demark and all that.
Yeah,
when the time comes.
I feel like just the last quarter after the antlions, just like something to mix up the Combine combat, because there was a large chunk of it after that section, the biggest chunk in the entire game, and you've just got the same tools you've been using, and I still really enjoyed the combat all the way through the game just because the novelty of VR is kind of magical, and I kind of forgot I liked VR until Half-Life Alyx. But just the pacing of the game was so consistent with giving you new things, it felt like it could do with just one little something. Just a little something.
Yeah, I was sort of trying to make the combat more interesting for myself by like, I'm going to deliberately like lean into this van and shoot out the window because like I could just stand there and kill them all because they're so bait, like they're just not doing anything. yeah, it was a little. Thankfully, I think for the most part, until that last 2 chapters, the Combine encounters are nicely spaced out and pretty infrequent.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of it near the end, and it's just sort of like, yeah, I've got the extended SMG mod, so I have like 90 rounds, I think.
Is there 90
SMG
rounds?
Jeez, I didn't get that one.
Yeah, before I have to reload.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just like I just lean around the corner and just hold down the trigger for like 30 seconds, and they're all dead.
I upgraded that thing the least because it was OP enough. Like,
it was very good. I only put the extended mag on, and that was it.
I don't think I upgraded it once.
I just got the laser sight, I think, and that was it.
I did end up putting the laser sight.
I put the laser on. I put the laser on the shotgun and the handgun, and then I put the auto loader on the shotgun and the handgun, and I put the reflex sight on the handgun. And
I love the autoloader on the shotgun. Oh, it's a great like.
Yeah, it's once I was coming on the end and was using the autoloader, it was like.
I got that fairly early because I found the shotgun annoying to reload, and I also didn't realize you could stack up
7 shots in
shells in it until like the 6th chapter because I just missed that tutorial prompt.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
It was on my right hand, and my right hand was off to my side. But yeah, the autoloader is very satisfying. Another broad thought. It's the first VR game and experience that I have wanted to stick with since Lone Echo.
Yeah.
Lone Echo prior is the only game that has kept me interested. And Lone Echo is only like 6 hours long. But at the time, it was the first game that was like, this doesn't feel like a toy box that I mess around with for 30 minutes and then uninstall and never play again. Yeah. Even Super Hot VR, it's like...
it's a one-trick pony.
Yeah, and they've got a good little 90-minute campaign in the Super Hot VR game, and it's good. It's still a fun toy box, but it is just a toy box.
Yeah.
Which in Super Hot's case, I mean, the PC game is that way as well, really. But Lone Echo was the first experience that I wanted to play through, and Half-Life was the first one since, and is definitely the most compelling experience in VR by a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
I do think very highly of Lone Echo, but Half-Life is so highly produced and twice as long as Lone Echo, and does a really good job of, like, from chapter 5 onwards, almost every chapter feels like a really fun, sort of unique gimmick, sort of like Titanfall. Which, I mean, Titanfall feels like, everyone said it feels like a Valve game because every level feels like this fun thing that they built the level around.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the hotel is an incredible level. The Jeff level is fantastic.
I'm going to have to talk about the hotel, my favorite. By the way. I'm just going to say that.
What's that?
Yeah.
I said I'm going to have to talk about the hotel.
We'll talk about that hotel.
We'll save that maybe for the spoiler section. I think. Yeah. Just do like a more detailed level chat. Are there any other thoughts before we get to the spoiler section? I think the sense of scale is remarkable.
Yeah, and they use it kind of...
The use of space.
They don't overdo the giant spectacle. They use it sporadically, and they kind of build up to those moments. They all feel like really special when they do happen.
Yeah.
I love the scale. I like how the time of day subtly changes, and the vault looks more magnificent as the sun goes down and the door.
Yeah.
Oh god.
The music that they used in some of those places too was really, really good. Like the
sound design as a whole is
the oversynth, all the electronic in there, like the heavy electronic stuff was really good.
Did you guys like the UI puzzles? Because I did, and I saw.
Oh, I did as well.
Donkey fucking hated them.
Fine.
I just saw his video.
Yeah.
I really like them.
I think they're a little basic, but they're fun. I really like the wall scanning stuff. That stuff just feels so good.
It's like future mechanic.
The other ones are like, they're fine. They look cool as well.
Yes.
Once I discovered that you can move both points on the orb puzzles.
Yeah.
That's
it's kind of necessary.
Yeah, coming on the end, oh man, I was getting heated at one of them, but that's how she goes. That's how she goes. You know?
When you're rushing those puzzles, they get really annoying really quickly.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it obviously, and it was alluded to at the start. This is a game, Half-Life, fabled franchise, and for this to be the first the gravitas of it, I suppose it was still nice while playing those early chapters to still have that feeling of like, okay, wow, this is a remarkable experience and isn't just over fluffed because it's a return.
I felt that way right through to the end of the game.
The which part, the pardon the irony of it, but like the half feeling of like, oh, this is just living up to all the hype, or this is exceeding.
I felt all the way through that it was like, yeah, Valve still knows what they're fucking doing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, for sure.
All the way through. Yeah.
It was
and it felt the whole thing did sort of feel a little reverential the entire time.
Yeah. Well, that was a worry I had going in. I was like, is it gonna be a good game, or am I just a fucking sheep? Like,
yeah.
Is it good? And so obviously,
and as someone that like doesn't care about Half-Life, I was like, am I going to feel connected to the Half-Life aspects and that sort of, like you said, the weight and the burden of Half-Life. And I felt like it was exceeding that throughout, I would say, or at the very least living up to those very lofty expectations.
And I would agree. That's where I would come in with it. And I would say that there was a moment in probably chapter 2 where I was like, this is about the time where I would put this headset on anybody to show them that this is what VR can really do.
Absolutely.
I know it's arbitrary as a first person shooter, like 60% of the fucking store, but it's it really did feel like, wow, like put this head, like get in here and feel like whatever you want, because it all reacts like it was exemplary. It was exemplary.
Yeah, it really was.
Well, and all of that learning being in one game with such high production values, it really does make you want to be like, this is why VR is exciting. And it did. It got me excited about VR again. And and it's a bummer because there's fucking nothing.
Gotta wait another fucking year to get anything close to this.
Like Lone Echo 2 was supposed to be out this month, and that's obviously not happened.
I'm nervous to play the Room VR, like, because I feel it's gonna be a step backward.
It's okay. It's good.
Okay. That is one disadvantage of this. It's like, everything else is going to be kind of mediocre compared to Half-Life now. Except I do expect Lone Echo to be a very high quality experience.
Yeah.
I think a big part of Half-Life in general is, I played Half-Life 2 like pretty soon to its release, maybe like 3 years after. I actually had it
when the Orange Box came out, right?
I actually played it before. I remember I had...
The 360 wasn't even out when I played Half-Life 2.
Yeah, I actually played it on the original Xbox, and I don't remember even owning one, but I think I might have borrowed my friends. But there is a novelty to being on the front lines of a new Half-Life game, which I have never been able to experience.
Same.
People talk about the launch of Half-Life and Half-Life 2 like these momentous occasions in technology. And it's the technology stuff that I've never really got to be there for. Because when I played Half-Life 2, I have no memory of thinking that it was a technical marvel. I just thought it was a good game. And that unique part about being there day one of a new Half-Life game and actually being in the zeitgeist of that technology being jaw-dropping was really, really cool. Because if everything goes well and VR continues to progress, hopefully when we go back to Half-Life Alyx in 5 years, it won't feel like it's that cutting edge, if you know what I mean. Like, hopefully VR, that would be the best case scenario if VR progresses so that Half-Life Alyx doesn't feel that great. And I'm sure it will still be a fun game, like how I played Half-Life 2 years after it came out. But it was so nice to be at the forefront of a new Half-Life game, not just to be, in that moment of gaming history where it's a new Half-Life game. Also, like a moment of VR history where the proof of concept is finally, getting its moment of validation. But to be there for the technology as a nerd who likes that stuff and to see it finally happen. And for 5 years' time, people will probably play Alyx and be like, meh, because they have played maybe other VR stuff first. And it will probably look better and have a higher frame rate and all these things. Maybe. And they will have learnt from the lessons that Valve have figured out from Half-Life Alyx. And they will grow on it, etc. And maybe when they go back to Half-Life Alyx, they'll be like, that was okay. And it's just really nice to be there for when it's more than okay. When it's fucking a revolution. And to just have the awe-inspiring moment that I've never had from a Half-Life game. Half-Life to me has always just been a fun adventure. It's never been about graphics or technology. But this time it was.
You got the magic sprinkles this time.
I got the magic sprinkles.
It's nice to feel for the second time for me that it's like, oh yeah, VR is a worthwhile thing to keep on top of and to care about, because I have been very compelled by VR since it started, and Lone Echo was the first time that I played something. So for me, some of the like revelations that people will have with Alyx being their first game is lost, because Lone Echo was the one for me that was just like,
right.
wow, this is a super AAA, super produced game that feels like it could only be done in VR because of the locomotion system, and was space and had, you know, a solid enough story, and gameplay and one or two amazing set pieces as well. So it was the first time that I felt that, but it has been 3 years since that game came out, and so it was nice to be reminded of what a really, really good VR game, how much there's so much to do with VR.
Yeah.
And this was a good reminder of like, wow, we are just at the very, very beginning of people taking advantage of this.
It's been hard to ignore VR this long, really. Like it's always come up in a way as far as gaming has gone, and it's nice that it's just crazy. I think the Valve's the one who was really like, yeah, VR for sure, and we're doing it.
I will say one or two quick things before we maybe move into a spoiler section. One other note about scale that I wanted to mention a minute ago. It's fun seeing some things in VR because it turns out they're way bigger, like the fucking head crabs. Are these giant meaty boys that are they're huge.
I think I saw concept art compared to people for like a Half-Life 2 episode, or like you see them in art beside human, but to see them in VR, it's like
they're thick.
That's a dog. That's a dog.
They are like they're like 10 pounds of beef.
It's no cat. That's not a cat. That's a dog.
And which is fun. I like that about the scale aspect. And then I did find it funny how unintimidating all of the enemies feel, except for the head crab. But like the Combine versus me are like small. And it was funny.
They are short.
Like Ben, you're the same, more or less the same height as I am, and it's like you get up next to a Combine and you're like, wow, you're kind of a little shrimpy guy, huh? Which was sort of funny. And there were a few times where it felt like the environment was actually not tall enough.
I had to squat low.
There were a couple of corridors where it was like clearly built for someone that was... Yeah, it was clearly built for someone that was 6 foot and not 6'3", 6'4". And you're like, oh, I'll just, slouch my head down a little bit so I'm not clipping into the ceiling, which is kind of funny. I always like when they get you to squat and crawl under things as well.
I like that this game got my heart rate going. It's a nice benefit of virtual reality to get some exercise in. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Sure,
I'll take it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then the last major note is that it's exceptionally comfortable. This game. And part of that is the headset for me, because I am now on a Rift S, and it is a way more comfortable headset as a glasses wearer as well in VR. So that is definitely a major part of it. But I mean, it has only been a week since the game came out, and I have spent 20 hours in Half-Life Alyx in 7 days.
Yeah.
And the longest session I had was like probably 3 straight hours where I finished the game out, and I could have kept going. The only thing, my knees and legs were starting to get a little sore from standing on a hard floor for 3 hours straight. But
I've been playing in slippers, which I would recommend getting a decent pair of cushioned slippers.
Yeah, I wore slippers for my first session, and then woke up with like a killer Charlie horse the next day.
Snap!
And I was
okay,
like, that might have been from wearing like bad. If I should have put like a proper
slippers.
A proper pair of shoes is probably a good thing to wear while playing.
Play it with runners.
VR
Speed. Start speed running Half-Life Alyx and just wear runners.
Now we're talking. But that's an important thing to note is how comfortable and how comfortable it is long term, and the fact that they made continuous motion comfortable for me as well, because I have not been a fan of them. I think a lot of it is just to do with how quickly the character moves. And Alyx, you move very slowly when you're doing continuous motion, and I
actually have no idea, because I remember at the very beginning I started my chat by saying I was sour on VR because I thought the format was a bit restrictive, because no game has been able to make continuous motion not make me nauseous, but for some reason Alyx doesn't make me nauseous at all, like nothing, which is really weird, and I don't know what they did, because I haven't been playing a lot of VR recently. So it's not like I've trained my brain or my eyes to adjust to it. I jumped into Half-Life Alyx after like months and months and months of break from virtual reality, and I felt fine. So I have no idea what they did.
Is it the smaller spaces in game? Do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I think a lot of it is the movement speed, honestly.
Yeah, they really got that down. Which after all this time, of course, they would. I think.
And
go ahead.
They might be doing stuff with they might be blurring the peripheral a little bit. I'm not sure.
I think they are.
You wouldn't really notice, right? I'm not sure what they're doing. Aside from the movement speed and the spaces, like you said, Ben, I'm not sure what else they're doing. They're probably doing other things, knowing how much they've learned over the years. But yeah, and that's a huge thing. It's super comfy for a very long sessions, which, yeah, like the prior, I mean, I would play Lone Echo in like 1 hour bursts, and then I would have to stop. And one time we did a 4 hour Rec Room stream, which was absolutely brutal. But a lot of that is also the headset. Like I said, glasses in that DK1 or the consumer version one of the Oculus. Yeah, the CV1 with glasses, brutal on the nose. But the Rift S, super comfortable.
Nice.
But yeah. Any other non-spoiler thoughts before we move into the spoiler section? Which I think we might as well have the spoiler section be the last chunk of the show.
If you have VR, you've probably already played Half-Life Alyx. Like it's really interesting how they were like, hey, let's pick the most expensive platform to put the most desired game franchise iteration out on.
It's alienating, and I get people being annoyed, but I love the balls of Valve just being like, well, we have infinite money because we're Steam, and we're gonna spend like 4 years, it sounds like, developing a new Half-Life game, and it's only gonna be playable in VR, and fuck you. And
it's what they like to do.
And
they like technology.
And it's a bummer for some people, and I can sympathize, but it is also important for exclusivity to happen in certain spaces. And I'm very glad that they went with that, and that it was Half-Life of all things.
Man,
I think
the balls on them. It's fantastic.
Before we go into spoilers, I think the only last point I want to make is I wish there was a little bit more platforming. I know it's weird to make that work in a format where you can teleport wherever you want, but they actually had a very few select sections where there was minor platforming. In the darkened warehouse where there was the scissor lifts, there was that one little thing where you jump on a pipe and you go along and you open up the air duct.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap, they're starting to move into that stuff, and it just didn't really come back. There isn't really that much platforming, and having played the entire Half-Life franchise recently, a large part of that game is kind of, I don't want to say puzzle platforming, but it's just like, how do I get up here? Jump here, jump here,
environmental sort of exploration-y puzzle. Yeah.
And they played with the concept in a few very select parts where you teleport to a pipe and then you can get to this boardwalk, and it just didn't pop up that much. And as a platforming fan, and I like that stuff in Half-Life, kind of wanted to see a bit more of that. But that's just my last minor nitpick when it comes to the game.
I wish there was more physics puzzles. Because early in the first or second chapter, it's a small thing, but when you have to pull the corpse out of the window and then put a box under the window to climb in, there's kind of not really much of that after that one instance.
There's one part where you chuck a grenade in an air duct, I think.
Yeah, but then they never bring those instances back and expand upon them.
It's almost like they knew. It's almost like they thought that once you pop that cherry, there's no sense in really going back to it. You know what I mean? Like, once you pull a body out of a window once, those bodies are heavy. Like, do you really want to do that 4 or 5 times?
They don't feel quite as good. Yeah.
But that's just me. That's just me on there. Like, but I get it though. I get what you're saying.
Like, almost every complaint I have about Half-Life, it's. I know that they have a reason for why they did something this way, because I know how much they just playtest everything so thoroughly, and it's like. The reason that there's probably not more platforming or physics puzzles, they probably have a reason for it, and I bet.
And melee, I wonder how long melee combat was in there until they took it out.
Yeah, exactly. And I bet like all these things, it's just like I bet they have a really thorough reasoning for why something doesn't work this way or why there's not as much of this one thing in there.
Yeah.
I feel like we forgot to mention the best part of Half-Life Alyx, which is how properly small objects work physically.
Yeah.
And the endless pleasure of opening drawers and cupboards and rummaging around with small objects.
Oh, it is rummage porn. Big time rummage and loot porn. That game, if you want to knock over some bottles or tip some boxes
It's
over.
so good.
Pull open a file cabinet, baby. Let me in. Let me cuddle in there.
Yeah.
Sleep. I live in here now.
Everything that feels like it should be heavy doesn't quite feel right because, you're not
The controllers stay the same weight.
Yeah.
Exactly. But like everything that your brain would perceive as being under, like, I don't know what it is, like under 5 pounds or under 3 pounds, like there's so much stuff in your normal day-to-day life that you interact with that you don't physically think about the weight of it because it is light enough. But anything over a certain weight, when you pick something up, you're like, oh, that was slightly heavier than I thought. Everything under that sort of threshold in Alyx just feels so perfectly right. All the little cardboard boxes and debris and buckets and chairs and table and like cupboards and all that stuff is just, it feels so good. It's so satisfying. And their physics simulation is so good for those smaller objects.
I think there's a small learning curve to like throwing things successfully in Alyx for me, but it's done it the best out of any VR game ever. I'm not sure why games struggle with chucking objects so much, but Alyx just absolutely nails it. I did have a few times where I underchucked something, and it might be my senses.
First grenade in the vent thing, I fucked that up for so long.
But I won't spoil something I recorded today, but I was flicking a key card like you would with a playing card in real life, and it felt like accurate. It like frisbeed in a way where I let go of the button at a time where I would let go of the card in my hand in reality, and it's really something special. I don't know why VR games struggle with throwing objects, but they do. They just can't get the velocity.
It's hard.
It's got to be. Source must help that. Like
I don't know.
I bet because I think of it the way the barnacles were pulling up barrels in Half-Life 2. Like those things had weight then. Like the source.
The physics is definitely a big part of it, but then
and it's been around.
Yeah, like calculating like. I don't know. I have a very limited understanding of games and all that, but I do think I have read that like computers have a really hard time of understanding what to do with like a computerized hand grabbing a computerized object and how those two should interact with momentum and things like that. And yeah, throwing stuff in VR games feels bad, but they nailed it in Half-Life.
Yeah.
It feels pretty good in Super Hot.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
You do have to adjust to super hot, though. There's like a trick to it.
Yes. Yeah, but Half-Life, it feels so natural for most of the objects. And yeah, that's sort of, like we said earlier, that's Half-Life in a nutshell. Is just, it feels better than all the other VR games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest testament you could probably give it right there. Yeah. Is that it's the best feeling VR game. And boy howdy, it's going to be a 2021 before we get anything that feels
more like 2020 whatever when they make another VR game from Valve.
Lone Echo 2 will do well, but whatever.
True.
If Valve ever comes back to VR, they
will. Yeah.
I have a feeling they might.
I mean, I watched.
It was funny when I booted up Lone Echo. Your hands don't bump into objects in Lone Echo, and I was like, I can't go back. I can't go back now.
My brain just broke. Ew.
But like that's it. It's like they nail it so much in Alyx. Just the fact that your hands bump into things, realistically, is a huge, tiny detail that changes the way your brain interprets VR games. And I can't go back to my hands not knocking over bottles anymore.
Yeah, I was just about to say I watched a interview with Gabe Newell recently.
Yeah,
and that guy is. VR is definitely coming back from Valve because he was talking about brain video game interfaces, and he was talking.
I watched that interview as well. He is such a nerd.
He was talking about
I love him.
Futuristic, crazy shit,
neural network integration with computers.
So I don't think that Half-Life is gonna go back to 2D somehow.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
Or if it does, Valve will be
that.
doing VR somewhere else, because they are definitely going to be the pioneers of the format, I think, from the attitude that Gabe was putting forward in that interview.
Yeah, I saw.
He likes it.
That was good. Yeah. Okay, so spoiler section. I will interject with an audio timestamp, a vocal audio timestamp for the audio only listeners. There will be a giant timestamp on the screen for the video people. We're going to talk openly about anything and everything related to Half-Life Alyx and all Half-Life games in general.
Yeah, it will be covering the series.
From beginning.
Spoiler.
So, 1998.
Here we go.
Unforeseen consequences.
4 guys in a garage. Gabe Newell. No.
I want to start.
Let's talk about levels and like work our way up to the end. Because I know Joe wants to start with chapter 5.
I want to talk about what I have coined as Spider Hotel. I could have called it Headcrab Hotel. That would actually work better. Alliteration is cool. But the reason I call it Spider Hotel is because the poisonous headcrabs to me, since I was a wee young lad, have always been spiders. They're not headcrabs. The other ones are headcrabs. The poisonous ones are their fucking spiders. So, as I said at the beginning, or near the middle of this review, I actually played Half-Life 2 quite a long time ago. Before I had the Xbox 360, before the orange box. I cannot remember how young I was when I first played Half-Life 2. I can't even remember when it first came out. What was the date of Half-Life 2?
2004.
2004. I probably played it quite shortly after that. I'm not going to do maths. I wasn't like 7, but, being honest, I was pretty slow to take to horror in video games and movies. I was a bit of a scaredy cat in my younger days. I had to, grow up and acclimatize and get used to spooks, and now I'm pretty thick-skinned when it comes to the genres. But I will be honest, I was a little bit of a scaredy cat about horror stuff when I was younger. So, Half-Life 2, Ravenholm was very fucking scary to me when I first played Half-Life 2. I don't know what it is about the poisonous black headcrabs. They fucking scarred me. The way they scream compared to the normal headcrabs, their long, spindly legs, how fast they are, how hard they are to see in Ravenholm, they scared me shitless.
And they'll bring you down to 1 HP.
Oh yeah, they're dangerous as well, especially if there's a few of them.
Do they do that in Alyx as well?
They do.
No.
They do.
Do they?
Yeah.
They bring you to 1 HP?
No, thanks.
They do. Anyway, cut forward to 2020. I'm replaying Half-Life 2. And it turns out
40-year-old man now.
I'm 40 years old now, and it turns out I'm still pretty scared of those things. And
that's great.
The only way I can explain it is it must be like an innate memory that is deep in my subconscious. Because I'm pretty good with horror games now. I can play VR horror. We'll talk about Jeff in a minute, but I was fine with Jeff. I could get up to Jeff and give him a sniff and see what's going on. I didn't give a shit. I played Alien Isolation in VR. I'm hardened.
Yeah.
But playing a 2D Half-Life game, those fuckers, there's something about them, they still scare me. Cut forward to Half-Life Alyx, now realizing that there is an innate primal fear of these boys, and it's probably there for life, because I'm scarred, apparently. And, boy, oh boy. If you are like me and you find those guys scary, I have bad fucking news for you.
There's a whole chapter about it.
Bad news for you.
Yeah, there's a room occupied with your name on it.
I think they know. I think Valve know that people have a problem with those guys. I assume a lot of people played Half-Life 2 when they were a bit younger.
Yeah.
Because the first time you encounter them is when you pick up the flashlight and you turn around and there was one in the darkness. And I knew
that part sucked.
I knew the second that I turned around and you could see one headcrab, it was the poisonous ones. And as soon as I saw that, I was worried because they used it as a horror setup. When you first see the poisonous boy in Alyx, they use it in a horror scenario. And I was like, oh, God, all right. And my biggest fear was that they were going to introduce an enemy in Half-Life 2, which actually, this is spoiler section, so it doesn't matter, but they don't appear, which is like the haunched over carrier.
The thrower,
fuck that
the carrier
guy. Yes.
guy. Yeah, oh man, he was the worst in the fucking games, dude.
So he was my worst case scenario. Little did I know that Spider Hotel was going to happen, and that was going to be worse than I ever could have imagined any scenario to ever be.
I'm so sad that you stopped streaming when you got to chapter 5.
I was very silent throughout the whole thing.
You remember all those head crabs on the back of that guy? We put them all in a hotel.
Oh my god!
Just for you, dude. Walk through it in real life, dude.
So for anyone who is listening who doesn't care about spoilers and is just listening for the hell of it, Spider Hotel is a hotel that is full to the brim with those chaps. And when I mean brim, it is absolutely swarming with them. I remember when you first encounter them, you see like 5 of them on the floor, and my first instinct was, I'm just going to let this one barnacle continue to eat them. And I will stand here for 20 minutes. And I did. I stood there for 50 minutes, and then I realized that they're not stopping. They are just... And then that's when I was getting really worried. When I was like, why are they just spawning instantly? Continuously, and that's when I was starting to get really nervous. But I continued, and there's a couple of spooks where one jumps out of the toilet and I giggled, and there's like 1 or 2 on the staircase, and I always pulled out my shotgun because it was worth spending the shells, even though they were pretty valuable at that point. And then you realize you have to go down, and I was just like, you gotta be fucking joking me, dude. You gotta be joking me. And then the lights go out. I absolutely loved Spider Hotel. It will forever go down in history for me as one of the most memorable levels in any video game, because it feels like my friends made the level to torture me. It feels like one of those cruel jokes. You know when someone's fucking with you on purpose? It felt like that. It felt like it had been designed just for me. And I won't spoil all the reveals, but we'll talk about Jeff. But Valve, they pull some really fun punches when it comes to horror. They make the scenario you are in get exponentially worse and worse. And when you think it can't get worse, it just gets worse. And in a really fun and playful way. Like in Spider Hotel when the power goes off and now you're in the dark. And then they just double the amount of spiders. Good. And then you have to go into the elevator shaft where they're crawling up the walls. And you don't know if they're going to jump out and get you. Oh my god. And Spider Hotel is brilliant. It will... Yes. I think without a doubt, when we do our end of the year podcast awards, if there's any most memorable sequences, mild spoiler for the end of 2020, but that's coming back up.
That's a front runner. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's an eternal category.
And it was a nice surprise for me because Jeff was the chapter that I had seen talked about on the internet. And I am going to assume that in general that, maybe not for you two guys, but I think on the grand scale, I think Jeff might have freaked people out a bit more because I just saw... Jeff. Like people kept talking about
Jeff quite a few times before I got to that section. Yeah.
So I had no anticipation because I just hadn't seen any reference to Spider Hotel.
Yeah.
So completely out of the blue, was not expecting it, was tortured by it. And Valve just have like a good sense of comedy within the horror so that it was never uncomfortable. Like I remember trying to play Resident Evil 7 on the PSVR. And I just like, if horror goes too far in virtual reality, it's just not fun. Like, because it triggers actual, like, emotional, evolutionary triggers in your body. It triggers fight or flight. And I don't want to feel real primal fear when I'm playing video games. I want to have fun horror. And I think most 2D games, for me, are fun horror. Because it's not me in the game. And VR can go too far.
Yeah, you're disconnected enough. Yeah.
VR is like heart attack stuff, where it's worrying. And I feel like Valve, we can, I don't know if you guys want to talk about Spider Hotel or just go to Jeff, but for all the horror segments, they keep this real sense of fun and comedy within it. And they alleviate the stress when it's most needed. And I think that's really important because I feel like I could have hated Spider Hotel unironically and just absolutely wanted it to end. And I was giggling like it was a scary maze at a theme park. That's what it felt like.
There's a lot of good oh fuck you moments in that game where you're just like, okay, you fuckers, all right, okay.
It's cruel in a playful way consistently.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we sort of forgot to talk about some of the like pre-release or release day moment review stuff that sort of maybe made us think it was going to be more of a horror experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I definitely 100% understand why someone would have a lot of very sort of horror stress moments throughout Alyx. I totally sympathize and understand. I think the first like couple hours where you're acclimating to it is where it was at its most intense for me. But then after after those, by chapter 4 onwards, like I never felt afraid in Alyx, and that's fine. I'm it's not a complaint. It was just something that I feel like we maybe thought was going to be the case based on a couple of reviews. But I definitely do understand why some people like would be terrified of Jeff. But I found all of those segments to be fun in the moment as well. Even like Spider Hotel, chapter 5 is where the game gets really good.
Yes.
And chapter 5 is really long. I was it was probably close to almost 2 hours for me to get through chapter 5.
It's so long.
And I love how the level sort of is just wrapping on top of itself, and you're getting closer and higher up, and I love the electrical doggy encounter thing, and then the spider nest.
Sorry.
It's all great. And like you said,
popped in his head and it scared him.
That wasn't even a joke.
Like you said, there's a lot of just great
fun
moments. Valve, they have a very good sense of fun with their horror.
Yes.
And for me, chapter 5 incredible, and chapter 6 is sort of like just basic traversal and combat. Jeff is a fantastic level as well. Probably my favorite level in the game.
It's so
very good level.
Not scary. I didn't find him intimidating at all.
No, they give you a lot of control. I think that alleviates.
Yeah, that's
some
the
of
thing.
horror.
You're in control.
He's like, if you get caught by him, like it was still even today unsettling. Like it's not when you get caught by Jeff, it is a little bit like, oh boy, he is right there.
Yeah.
And he is doing his nasty thing all over me.
He got me in the lift.
For sure. Oh, did he?
Yeah, I went to push the button and I was just a bit too loud.
That was fun. That was a cool.
Oh my!
That took me a while to figure
out. The
out.
lift is so genius.
That whole segment is so good, where you're like trying to open the elevator, like with the wheel, right? And you're like, okay, that was the one time I got caught, where it's like, I'm gonna see how far away I can lure him, and then try and open the thing, and it's like, okay, that's not gonna work. And then it was like, how do I fucking deal with him? And I'm standing in the fridge area, looking out, and I'm like, how the fuck? What do I do with it? And then I leave the fridge area and turn around, and it's like the classic Valve thing of, aha, I understand, right at the right moment, and locking him in the fridge, calling the elevator, the power going out, having to reopen the fridge, go in there, call the elevator, get on the elevator, have him come onto the elevator with you. The whole thing is just so much good back and forth.
It's
and
great.
Then that later segment of the level where you have to like open the drawers and they have all these bottles lying on their sides, just like ready to roll out.
Yes.
I'm like, you motherfuckers.
Yeah, the amount of times I opened a filing cabinet drawer, I was like, you fuckers.
Yes.
Like, what? Like, of course.
There's so many good moments like that in that level, and that's where VR shines, where you're like, oh shit, I caught the bottle out of the air, and there's an achievement for it, and it's such a good. Yeah, that whole level is just so much fun.
It's
so clever. So many moments of just like, oh, you bastards, this is great.
Especially after Spider Hotel, where they'd already kind of played their cards on how they pace horror. So as soon as I lock Jeff in the fridge, I'm like, well, Jeff's obviously going to get out of the fridge. He's going to bust through.
Yeah.
But then they top it off by revealing you're the one who's going to have to let him out. And I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah. Okay. And that was a good little moment where you're like,
you keep waiting for him to just break it himself.
Yeah.
Because he's thumping at it.
Yeah.
And when he gets in the lift, oh my God.
It's so funny. It's so good.
It's so good.
Another thing I wish I forgot to mention it outside of the spoiler section, it's probably my favorite thing in the whole game, is the way that they emulate the sound of your clothes moving when you move. I haven't stopped being amazed at how good that is. It's such a small detail. Just when you move like your right arm, and it's like, I can hear my jacket moving. It's so smart to emulate your physical body without actually having it physically exist. Anyways, and I like the gimmick of putting your hand up to your mouth. It didn't work as well on the Rift S because of the way the tracking works.
Yeah.
I like because there are cameras in the headset, so I had to sort of hold my hand slightly in front of my face.
That's fair.
I found the gas mask pretty quickly and put that on, and I love that as well. Putting the gas mask on and just being like, fuck you, game, I'm not putting my hand up to my face anymore.
I will say,
I really liked. Go ahead.
I was going to say after Jeff, I feel like I could have done with one more novelty scene after Jeff leading up to the end.
Yeah, I was going to say I really like chapter 9 or whatever, where you're going through the zoo.
Yes.
I love that environment, and they have some fun moments in there as well. Just like when you see the tiger like cut out, and there's like a zombie that spawns behind it, and the zombie goes, and I'm like, what the like, it's a funny moment.
Can we talk about the zombie that flushes the toilet?
That's the funniest thing in that whole game.
That's so stupid.
There's a really good like sort of environmental comedy in that game.
Yeah.
I think.
Did you guys squish Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
I think you have to. Yeah.
No,
you can just lock him in there, I think.
Yeah, I didn't squish him. I let him out.
I squished the hell out of him.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
I let him out before I went down.
Because I felt bad. I kind of liked him.
Fuck
Yeah,
that.
I got an achievement for letting him out.
Oh, I crushed him.
Then I went
wow.
down the outline tunnel. Yep.
Interesting. The Jeff had one final fuck you, and I squish him, and then I opened it and went back in to look at the mess.
Yeah, how's he looking?
And I'm like, and there's a line that Alyx says.
I liked it.
And it was funny. I'm like, that's cute. And then there's one last fuck you, which it only will work under certain circumstances. But I was like leaned over, looking right at the pile, and the his like spore emitter lets out one last in your face if you lean forward into it, and it made me jump. And I was like, you motherfucker! It was so funny.
That's so good.
But yeah, I agree. Chapter 8 felt like a good something different, but it still felt like a unique sort of gimmick with all the zoo stuff, which I really liked.
Yeah, I love the
and then, chapter
the zoo
10,
was a great environment. Yeah.
Chapter 10 is just pretty standard again, like chapter 6, where it's just you're just wandering around and doing combat, and that was. I agree. They could have used one more thing. They do it in chapter 11, which I think is good. That chapter 11 has good, unique stuff in it, but there's just a bunch of like pretty straightforward traversal and combat between the zoo and the finale.
Yeah, I'm probably thinking of specifically chapter 10, where I could have just done with something. I don't know what the thing is, but a thing.
Yeah, I agree. Agreed. And I regarding the being uncomfortable and like horror stuff, the only thing that ever bothered me in the game, and it's always bothers me in all games, is when enemies really quickly invade personal space.
Yeah.
I dislike it in all games, 2D as well, including the headcrabs. I get like a physical response whenever something just scurries up into my face. I just sort of get like, get out of here. And I definitely had that with the headcrabs a lot. But having to do a myth recording where I had to catch a headcrab in a bucket, that fucker was jumping at me a lot, and I went into that session like not looking forward to it, and I've left that session being immune to Half-Life now, which is not that bad.
I don't think I'll ever be immune to the big poison boys. It's just too deep. It's too deep in my brain. But I'm not complaining. I like that I had an authentic horror moment for 40 minutes and then got the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. And then I think the final chapter is fucking incredible.
Yes.
Wow.
Probably my favorite final chapter in a game in a very long time.
God,
it made me think of I felt similarly about it to how I felt the finale of like BioShock Infinite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you go back to Rapture and you're like, wow, this is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
I love the super powered up glove, unlimited power Palpatine simulator at the end. I think the auto aim on that thing is a little wonky. Like it sort of veers.
I didn't have a good time with them. I didn't have a good time throwing those things. Yeah, it's just I couldn't wrap my head around. I couldn't wrap my head around not holding something and then still having to throw it.
So I was just flicking the wrist like Spider-Man, like web flick, basically.
I was doing
and that was working really
out.
well. Interesting.
Yeah.
Not doing a Palpatine.
But yeah, I love that section. It was a very fun, cool section.
Yeah.
And then
I like the stuff before it that reminded me of Control. Like the mind-bending rooms upside down stuff.
Oh yeah, was that before it? I thought that was after it. Yeah,
I think so. Right? Before it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was before.
The orb stuff is before the what I've interpreted as 4-dimensional stuff, but then it wasn't 4D.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Anyways, yeah, that section is also really great.
Yeah.
What I liked about it maybe the most, I mean, like it's a great use of VR and giving you trippy senses of up and down and all that is great. But I liked two things. The sound design in that whole finale is incredible. With the weird, like, violin off in the distance and the like, wow, constantly. The sound design in that whole section is just incredible. And then I loved the immediate sense, as soon as you get into the trippy 4-dimensional stuff, if you want to call it that, is like, oh shit, G-Man is near.
Yes.
You know? Like, you know he's going to show up because it's a Half-Life game. Also, he was in the trailer. But you know he's going to show up regardless. And as soon as something gets weird in Half-Life, you're like, all right, it's G-Man time. And he's been completely non-existent for that entire game. And as soon as that section started, I'm like, all right, I presume I'm just going to open one of these doors and the G-Man's going to be there. And I loved that sense of like, okay, where the fuck, what's going on? And then the whole reveal is so well done when you open that door.
Yep.
And get to the walkway, and his profile is very minimally lit, but you instantly read his profile and you're like, oh, it's the G-Man. Oh, fuck.
Oh, like, oh, shit, he's the one who got captured. Because when you're in there, you're like, this is a lot for Gordon Freeman. He's just a guy.
And you're the one who let him out. Like, you're like, so it when you got to kind of think about that. I was thinking about that as it was happening.
It's such a good moment of just being able to iconic character design being used well as well. Where you're just like, and as soon as I saw the profile and realized, and you realize, oh shit, like I'm the one letting him out and unleash, and like, oh yeah, the Vortigaunts, of course, the Vortigaunts are the one powering the vault. Like they're the only ones that have ever been able to interfere with him. And then that whole segment is just so good. Oh man,
holy moly, dripping.
Video games do not get me to have any sort of audible reaction. And the only times that I do, I know it's a good like if I am audibly reacting to something, it means that they're doing some good shit. And that whole ending finale got me like a 3 or 4 like oh fuck out of me.
What a fucking payoff.
The G-Man encounter is so good. The use of the audio is great. It was exactly what I was hoping for. Like weird binaural, audio placement of him
just walking around
right up in your face. And then the absolute fucking madmen.
The madmen.
Oh, I have so much respect for them.
What a move.
They're dealing with the most like famous cliffhanger ending in video game history. And then they're like, we're going to fucking change this ending so we can make more Half-Life games easier. Amazing. And I'm very glad I played the second episode. Like I had played it 2 days before.
Yeah,
definitely.
If I didn't have that context, it would have not worked. And I'm so glad that I had played that. It made it all worthwhile. And just the first time, when you see him floating, you're like, oh shit, they're gonna do this. And then oh man, and after credits scene, holy shit,
God,
they did, like the madmen again, because they literally like.
The whole game
if that had leaked like 2 months ago, they would have been like people. The people online would have been like, ew, like what the ew, gross. Like they literally put the crowbar in your hand. They literally put the crowbar in your hand, and it's amazing. It's fucking amazing.
I think I almost screamed when Dog jumps in. You finally get to see Dog in VR. I was like, Dog, no way,
Dog in VR. Like that, I was like listening because I was like, so once the suit kicked on, I heard the suit kick on. It was like vitals replenishing, and I was like, oh fuck, like is that all they're gonna leave you with? Is just like the audio Easter egg? And then next thing you know, you're Eli Vance is in front of your fucking face, and he's like, what's going on?
They hold that white screen just long enough with the vital signs critical. They hold it just long enough where you're like, oh, that's a cute Easter egg. Yeah, cute little stinger. And then they're like, Gordon, wake up! And it's like.
Oh my
God. Fully rendered episode 2 ending environment, and oh my God.
I
cannot believe that they fucking made an entire game that ends with Half-Life 3 confirmed
episode
W.
Yeah.
I think BioShock Infinite is actually the perfect comparison, because the unique thing about BioShock Infinite is the reveal that it's connected to something and you had no idea it was connected to it. And that reveal is very unique and special, and something you can't really replicate on purpose very often, because
it's the circumstances have to be so specific.
It's propped up on some flimsy stilts, but it's up there fucking
And also,
high,
I just want to have some respect for the people who have played Half-Life Alyx before, because it was nowhere. At least I didn't stumble into it. I feel like the whole internet's been very, very quiet. I haven't. Yeah. I'm sure somewhere some asshole has leaked it. But yeah, I mean, people have beaten it before it came out, and I saw nothing about the ending.
Yeah.
All I heard is whispers that yes, this has a connection to the series. That's all I heard.
Yeah, Valve straight up said like you should brush up on your Half-Life, before. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's a fucking Half-Life game.
When I was at the end, I was like, oh, cool, G-Man's gonna like explain how Gordon gets to the beginning of Half-Life 2. Little did I know that I was gonna be in the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2, continuing on. Never did I think it was gonna go that far.
No.
Incredible.
My brain, and leaves you with your brain going, like, like they say the perfect ending is, or the perfect at least first ending is, you should be leaving more questions than you answer. And man, they answered a lot of fucking questions, but boy, howdy did they find a great way to leave you with so many more.
Yeah,
it's so smart because the ending of Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and it's less so the ending and more so the fact that they didn't follow up on the ending left them with such a burden, right? And it's like, how do we as storytellers solve this problem we wrote ourselves into and then didn't solve when the time was right? And it's like, what is the solution to this? How do we continue making Half-Life?
You take it back.
It's so the whole play is so brilliant where it's like all of Half-Life Alyx is like a G-Man test and it's a prequel and it's like, okay, this makes sense. And then the intelligence of that team in taking an ending that was basically a ball and chain, like an anvil, just like weighing them down. Yeah, and like the ending of Half-Life 2 has been an incredible burden on Valve for now 13 years. And then their solution is, let's open it up to have we can do anything we want now. It's so smart. I have so much respect for that ending, and it was so fucking good.
I don't think I think I will probably remember G-Man saying, "What if I could give you something you don't know you want yet?" That line, and then him putting the case out and letting go of it and it just floating towards you.
It's such a oh shit moment.
Yeah, when that suitcase started to come towards me, I had the heebie-jeebies out of my mind because of G-Man, they done so. First of all, I looked for him multiple times when I was playing.
He is not present at all in the game until you let him out, which is such a good small detail. Yes, and he is present. He is present in the post-credit scene. He's on the railing off to the left, watching over you and Alex, or you and Gordon and Eli. Yeah,
crazy. So it's they've made him so perfectly unsettling.
Yeah,
G-Man is an all-time great character in anything. I looked up how much screen time he has. All the speeches, all of his appearances in one video, it's 14 minutes across 20 years. Or now almost 30 years, because it's been...
Prolific.
98 was... No, 20 years ago. Yeah, I'm doing my math wrong. And 14 minutes in 20 years, and he's so iconic.
Yeah.
And so, it's so rare for someone for mystery to be written well.
Yeah.
And to have him he's still so well written after all this time as well, where it's just he is this unknowable entity.
I love his delivery so much.
Yeah. His voice actor is perfect.
The drawl and everything.
Who his employers are, I don't know.
That was so good. Where he was that's a little too strong of a nudge.
We don't allow, that's unacceptable, too much work, he's so well done, and they handle him so well in this game, and the fact that now knowing that people have done the legwork and confirmed that he does not appear at all in Alyx until he let him out, it makes so much sense.
Crazy, because you're not gonna every time I looked at a railway off somewhere, I was like, no, I'm not gonna see him. He would be there. That's where he would be. When you're coming through the mill, when you're outside the vodka mill and you're fighting all those combines, I was like, he's watching this.
Yeah.
he's got a bird's eye view of this shit. Where's he at? I can't see him. It's fine.
I also love that they set it up thinking you're rescuing Gordon Freeman, because when they reveal that in chapter 8 or whatever, and that was when you posted in 9, and you're like, well, this is certainly
a Half-Life game.
Yeah, and I was like, well, that makes sense. It's pretty corny, but yep, I get it. You're going to rescue Gordon.
Yeah.
So they know exactly what they're doing, and I love that. They're
and
playing
G-Man's
with you so well.
Yeah, G-Man's like, our other hire didn't work. Shows you Gordon Freeman outside your body.
Man.
And then he walks away. So you're like, oh, okay, there he is, and there he's gone.
Yeah.
Like, what a great mislead.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
not only just in the story, I just think nowadays with the internet, it's so difficult to keep a reveal under wraps.
That's pro wrestling, baby. Like that's pro
pro
wrestling.
They didn't just accomplish a plot twist. They sold the game as something that it wasn't. I thought we were playing like a Rogue One, a filler. You know, they're going to fill a gap in the timeline. Somehow
they'll sprinkle the Skywalkers in.
Yeah. Somehow they sold something which continues the entire franchise and gives you more on an ending that I thought they had dropped forever. Because when the Half-Life 3 plot was just chucked out there by the main writer, I was like, they've given up on this. They're going to use Half-Life Alyx and, I don't know, a one-off thing where they just fill in some of the timeline for fans. I had no idea that this was them proposing that they are going to keep the story going. That was one of the greatest reveals in any game ever, I think.
Yeah, it's such a confident and affirmative statement of, yo, baby, we're back.
Yes.
Yeah. We're doing more. Because, like, I mean, they could do another Half-Life Alyx game as a follow-up, and then do Half-Life 3. And
but where's Alyx now?
Well, exactly. But like they could also, is Half-Life 3 VR only? Like, I kind of hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
But
I really hope so.
It's crazy how many doors they open with this after 13 years of being weighed down by so much expectation and setup and all that. And mad respect.
Crazy.
Like they're so smart. And I mean, it's mostly all the original writers are still working on this, like all those people are still there.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And it shows. The worst part of the writing to me is the dialogue in the first 5 chapters, where it's just like endless quips, and it's like, yep, these are the Firewatch people. They work at Valve now.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah. And but they, chapter 5 onwards, they're like, all right, we're
is Russo dead? Did they insinuate he was just killed? Because he's not in the other games.
Yeah. I mean,
he'll come back. Probably.
You heard
I doubt
people burst into his room near the end.
I would presume
they'll have him. Yeah, he'll be the one who puts the portal gun in gloves.
No, I presume that he's just a character that 5 years of war has happened between Alyx, and episode 2. Like, it's very easy to believe that he died or got captured.
Yeah, true.
Though the delivery of his last line was weird, where it sounded like he was giving up or something. Like he's like, yeah, Alyx, we did it. Yeah. And it's like, why are you so bummed?
They also set up like a female villain who's talking with one of the Inquisitors. What, the big bug boy?
Yeah, whatever they're called. Yeah, I saw some people speculate that was Mossman.
Yep, that's what I thought, because how she was played. Mossman.
I don't think so. Yeah.
But I think she's pretty clearly an ally by the end of Half-Life 2.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, my biggest complaint is that they got me, those motherfuckers.
Yeah, they got you.
And now I care about Half-Life, the story especially. Now I'm like, now I want to know what they do next. Fuck.
Yeah, it was a plot twist bigger than the story itself. It had ripples of importance, that plot twist.
Yeah, and that they kept it. Everyone kept it under wrap. And I mean, I did finish the game pretty quickly because I didn't want it spoiled. But I have not seen anything. If I hadn't gone out of my way to search out people playing the ending or discussing the ending, I've not seen anything.
Yeah, me neither.
About the spoiler, which is great.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest potential spoilers of all time. One of the most significant gaming endings, and no one really seems to be ruining it.
It's legendary. Like, I mean, they solved the ending of Half-Life 2 Episode 2, like the most famous gaming cliffhanger of all time.
Yeah.
Man.
Can't believe they did it. I can't believe they did it.
And, like, grabbing the crowbar was so hype.
Yes.
It's so corny, but it's so hype.
I was like, they're gonna take it away as soon as I grab it with both hands, right? Like, it's just gonna fade to black, and I'm not. And then it's like you get to keep it for like 5 seconds, and it's like,
Little taste.
fuck, like, I'm a little baby, and I'm in this like, like I feel like I fucking got a pinwheel hat on, and it's like I got the crowbar, and I'm like, oh, they did it, and then it's over, and it's like, thanks.
Yeah, true. But in a good way.
Fuck, what a game.
Absolutely fantastic. It's so nice to play like a super focused action adventure game that is hyper polished, hyper well produced, full of creativity, and also has some fucking amazing surprises in it that I was not expecting.
It stuck the landing.
It was a pleasure.
Let's just say I'll be talking about it at the end of the year, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Damn.
I feel that way about both Doom and Half-Life, where it's like, man, for me, this year has started off real good.
Yes.
And now, boys, we get to talk about Animal Crossing for an hour. Let's fucking go, dude. No, just teasing. No, Half-Life, great fucking game. Who would have fucking thought? I'm so glad we all got to play this game, dudes.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so glad we all got to play
it would have
this,
been
and
lame
we
if
did
just
it
one of
pretty
us played
fast,
it.
and-
Really lame.
Oh, yeah. And I'm glad that I bit the
I would have probably
bullet
I would have probably uninstalled Discord if I couldn't have played this game with you guys.
and- Wow,
It would've
wow,
sucked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Valve spending...
Shout out to Valve.
Well, in general, but also spending...
Hey, thanks.
spending like at least 3, probably more like 4 years making another fucking Half-Life game, and then keeping it under wraps and only announcing it in December and shipping it on time 3 months later.
Yeah. They kept it so
we
quiet.
We didn't spend 2 years looking forward to this. They're like, yeah, there's a Half-Life game coming out. Let me see, in 3 months.
Yeah. So I went back to the No Clip documentary on Half-Life, and he was talking to Jeff Keighley, and they wouldn't say a single thing. They didn't even insinuate to Jeff Keighley, and he's quite a behind the
He's
scenes.
the Dorito priest.
And he was on the no Clip documentary, and he asked the guys, "Hey, I'm doing my video game awards, and do you have maybe an updated model for G-Man?" Like he was trying to,
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we wouldn't even know where to find like that model of G-Man. We haven't touched it in years. And
G-Man here at Valve? No,
that was a
no,
2019 video. So they lied to Jeff Keighley's face.
I love it.
I love it.
And also, I cannot wait for Jeff Keighley's doing the final hours of Half-Life Alyx, where they're going to talk about like all the abandoned Half-Life things that they've worked on over the years, and I can't wait to see what they've done.
Jeff through fucking gritted teeth. It's a great game.
And
okay,
I'll go talk to Kojima instead.
It was a great game, okay, but you guys lied.
I love it.
Yeah, the games are often too secretive about a lot of things, or rather, they're too secretive for the wrong reasons, right? Where it's like
games are getting too cowardly. They're getting
it's
too
like,
cowardly.
will it have multiplayer? It's like, oh, we're not talking about it at this time. It's like, just fucking shut the fuck up. Yes, of course it's gonna have multiplayer.
Like the new Batman game, for example.
Yeah, it's like, just announce it. Like, who cares? But like,
Avengers.
a great secret is so great in games. And I don't care a whole lot about spoilers most of the time, but there is nothing quite like a really magical surprise in a game. Yeah. And Half-Life absolutely delivered that in a way that we haven't had. I felt a little bit that way about, actually rather a lot of that way about Control with a certain thing. But
that was good.
But the sort of, the physical manifestation of seeing these things happen obviously adds a lot to it, and it is probably the hypest finale since Infinite, really. Because there's so much weight behind seeing something like Rapture again, or seeing fucking Gordon Freeman picking up his crowbar.
And you being Gordon.
It's so good. Did you check out his sweet gloves? Man,
I tried. I was overwhelmed.
Yep.
I blacked out.
I did. First thing I
checked
out was like, how
held
are
up
these
the
hands
glove.
looking?
Yeah, and they were good. They were good looking hands.
God. Oh my God.
Well,
I'm gonna play it again soon. Like,
yeah, me too.
I'm gonna play the last
probably next
chapter
week
for
or
sure.
something.
I'm just gonna
Once
start
I'm
after
done-
Spider Hotel.
Once I'm done with videos for both Doom and Half-Life. I look forward to replaying them both. You know, with my brain more turned off, in a sense, because I was already doing video work while I was playing through the game, which is never ideal, but it didn't really compromise things too much. But it'll be nice to just sort of, replaying stuff I always enjoy it, especially when the context has changed a lot by knowing what the whole is.
Boys, we need to talk about the potential of if people are going to mod this game, because we've never played a moddable project in virtual reality.
I want Half-Life. I want 2 and 1, and I want 2 and 2A and 2B to be put on VR.
We really could be seeing more playable Half-Life Alyx things made by fans in the future, as long as they have the Source 2 assets.
We will be 100%. Valve is going to be releasing similar to what they did with Portal 2's level editor. They're doing one of those.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Holy shit! This is going to be crazy.
I don't know if you know this, but Valve added VR support to the Half-Life games. The old.
Why do we doubt? Why do we?
I don't know if you knew that, but there will be I don't know if it's the SDK, but it's like a level editor sort of thing is going to be released.
Source is just so open anyway for people who want to get that.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's why they call it Source.
Yeah. Valve has pretty much said, that they're like, people are going to mod the shit out of this, and we're totally on board with that.
I think what I'm looking forward to is how far they take it away from what Half-Life Alyx is. Because if you think back to the Half-Life 2 mods, things like from Gary's mod to X and Y, things just got really fucking crazy and weird. And Half-Life is obviously, we had Counter-Strike and all this crazy shit. I just want to see, are people just going to, make it Half-Life Alyx-like, but with different environments, maybe add some new weapons in? Or people are just going to use this VR engine to go absolutely nuts and we'll be playing something almost unrecognizable from Half-Life Alyx. That's what I'm most interested in seeing.
The Valve safety net will certainly be thrown in the garbage when random human beings just start making crazy VR. Like, I expect some wacky, platforming stuff and, breaking all the comfort rules and just, going crazy with the engine.
Here's a question. Will we be playing Half-Life Alyx together this year? Will someone mod that in?
I fucking want it.
Co-op?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I want to get married in Half-Life Alyx.
That is almost the first direction that Half-Life has taken when modded. Half-Life 1 and 2 both went instantly multiplayer. That could be interesting.
We'll find out. I will say, when people play the game inevitably in VR, they're not going to think it's all that exciting.
No, I reckon people still like it.
It'll be within that. Yeah. It's got to be, and I hope, man, if people, it's going to make me mad. It's going to make me mad when people are like, this game is boring.
Yes.
Playing it too. It's just going to make me
mad. And that's
the
thing that's going to be present because, we'll put this up on the channel and there'll be, I guess, I'm going to have to record fucking 2 hours of Half-Life gameplay because we've been talking for so long. But,
I'll give you my 45 minutes of bottle flip. I'll have to just put that in uncut. Just put that in uncut.
Just put that in for the spoiler section. Outside of VR and in video form, it really does not do it justice. I mean, obviously, the visuals and the audio and the story and all that is appreciable. You know what I mean?
Yep.
In video form, but the if you haven't tried VR, you cannot explain to someone the presence of VR.
It's
I would
magical.
also say,
find a rich friend.
I will say,
I
still don't think I would recommend people buy VR. Even with Alyx, you've got Alyx, Lone Echo, Super Hot, and a few other good Moss and Gorn. Gorn, of course.
Funny you mentioned Gorn.
And Gorn 2, whenever that comes out. But I still don't think people should spend the money for VR.
Yeah, it's still not time, in my opinion.
Which is tragic. Yeah,
it will get there.
This is a good step closer to that being more recommended.
Oh yeah, this would be the biggest push that it could have ever gotten.
Yeah, and I mean the Index has been sold out for 6 months straight now because it just sells out instantaneously, which is good. More VR in the market is good. Also, it doesn't help that obviously manufacturing is now a mess. But anyways, we should stop talking. This has been 3 hours. Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Go play those games. 'Cause there's nothing else to do.
That is true. Half-Life Alyx was pretty fucking special. And I thought I wouldn't give a shit. And man, do I care so much.
care arguably now more than ever about the Half-Life.
I care so much.
Also, it really makes me want a Portal game just because I care so much more about the Portal universe. If you know what I mean. I mean, obviously it's the same universe as Half-Life, but even though Portal 2 is a perfect video game, the best, most perfect video game ever created with an amazing, perfect ending and its flawless masterpiece, I would still love to see the humor and goofy puzzles and like Portal is a much more
good writing.
Fun
is what you're trying to
game. Also good writing, yes. Good humor.
Yeah, good.
Oh man, I hope they can find a way to make a VR a Portal game. It would be so fucking cool.
I honestly think if anyone is capable of merging two IPs together, Valve is the one who would do it. I don't think they would bring in the Borealis, the Aperture Science ship, into Half-Life 3 without, bringing some novelty Portal stuff into it. It wouldn't really make sense. And they are fun first people. They would do it. I really think so.
Yeah. The portal gun and the gravity gun in the same game would be an amazing. Like imagine, you put a portal and then shoot your fucking saw through the portal and like, oh my god.
All Valve really give a shit about is surprising people and making people have fun. So if it's a good idea, they would do it. I would be shocked if the portal gun didn't appear if the Aperture Science stuff was included in the next Half-Life game.
Yeah.
Even if it's there for like one level or a reference. They would absolutely do it.
Also, I'm going to go replay Portal 2 now.
I did this year. It's fantastic.
I did last year, and it's still so good.
It's so good.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Hey,
that's it.
Thanks for listening. Love you.
Nope,
Stay safe.
It's Joe's show. You fucking imposter. This isn't a podcast.
Go listen to the podcast. I'm on it. Go listen to me. Forget these clowns.
Hey, thanks for joining, Ben. Appreciate it, dude.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you very much for listening. It was a long one. I think our talks of Doom and Half-Life Alyx went on longer than we expected, but there was more going on than I previously thought there would be when jumping into these games, and I'm very happy for that. I think we all are. But
and we'll be back with more games in April.
Yes. Because what have we got?
There are still games coming out. Shitty Resident Evil, shitty Final Fantasy, and
shitty shit.
Gears Tactics. I'll probably play Gears Tactics, maybe.
Sure. Okay.
But at least Resident Evil and
Final Fantasy 7,
which are both big games. So
yeah.
I'll be probably talking about Animal Crossing next time we do a podcast.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to talk about that, that'll be that.
Yep. Spotify, iTunes for our normal podcast. And until then, guys, we will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.